right, welcome everyone. Today is April 23rd, 2025. It's now 4 o'clock and a meeting of the Heber Light and Power Board. I want to welcome everyone that will watch this, everyone that's here in the room, as well as our board members, Kevin Payne, Kendall Crittenden, myself, Heidi Franco, and Brenda Christensen that's here, as well as the Heber Light and Power staff. Sid Ostergaard has contacted me and says that he's likely to be late today. We hope that Aaron Cheatwood will join us. Everyone, the first agenda item is the approval of the consent agenda. You've seen the March 26, 2025 board meeting minutes, the financial statements for March, and the warrants. Are there any questions, comments, or motions on the consent agenda?
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion? Okay, then we'll start with you.
Aye.
And then
Yes.
Okay. And I'm saying yes?
And I'm saying yes.
All right, that passes 4-0.
That's Clay.
That's Clay. All right, everyone, the second agenda item is the review and approval of a wage study proposed pay ranges. And Clay Johnson, you just joined us. Thank you very much. I'm Heidi Franco. Clay, can you say something so that we can turn the time over to you?
Hi, Aaron.
Yes, hello.
Hello. Thank you very much for joining us. You feel free to get started. Do you need to make him a presenter?
He's already good.
All right, you can share your screen now, Clay, if you'd like. Or we can put the presentation up and you can tell us when to go next.
Okay,
What would you?
I will be ready in just 1 second.
All right, thank you. Hi, Aaron.
Okay, sorry.
No worries, we just passed the consent agenda.
You didn't miss
Great,
much.
I was a yes for that too.
Okay.
Okay.
You haven't missed much, huh?
All right. We're doing agenda item 2.
Right, you are all very
We're
efficient.
5 to do the audit after him so that Squire will.
All ready to go before I even got here. That's impressive. Okay, are we good with audio and visuals here?
Looks like it.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much for the time on the agenda to discuss the results of this wage study. I don't know if Carly or anyone made any introduction for me or for GBS, but just a quick note. I'm returning to do this study for a second time for Heber Light and Power. The last version of this a couple years ago, I also got to take the lead on that and really enjoyed the experience. Really enjoy working with the team there at Heber Light and Power. So I, by trade, I'm a compensation professional. I have the certified compensation professional designation, and just love this comp stuff so much. And I run for GBS, the arm of their consulting arm that does total rewards and compensation consulting. So just a little bit about me. Okay. Now my PowerPoint seems frozen. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So as you can imagine, we're trying to overview many months worth of work in just a few minutes of content. So I will keep things pretty high level, but the intent in sharing this with you is to share enough that you feel confident in the results and in using the results and recommendations in your organization. And so if there's anything that you feel like could be better explained or could use a little more detail, please chime in. I can't see all of you, so feel free to just chime in and request or ask more questions. Okay, so the contents are pretty simple. We're going to do a brief overview of the process that we followed to conduct this wage study, the methodology that was used, and the key findings and recommendations. And then there's an appendix there that we won't spend a ton of time on live today, but you can reference on your own. Okay, so this probably goes without saying, but just to make sure it's very clear, the purpose of this wage study is to go out and assess what are the going rates for the jobs that are performed at Heber Light and Power. And there's not necessarily a specific objective to achieve. The objective is not to raise wages, lower wages. It's simply to understand what is the going rate out of the market and how can Heber Light and Power design pay ranges, pay practices that help them remain at a certain competitive level out in the labor market. So, to achieve that end, we follow this basic high-level process, understanding the scope of work, making sure that we're very clear on the job catalog, what are all the jobs that are being performed at Heber Light and Power, so that we can compare on a job content basis, not on a job title basis, and then make sure that we're using adequate and valid data, salary data, wage data, to make these comparisons and perform these analyses. And the outcome is we get to benchmark each job and then recommend pay ranges that would be appropriate for your employees. Okay. Any questions there on that high-level overview? Okay. So there are quite a few methodologies that can be used to create or revise pay ranges. The ones that are being used in this study are best aligned with your compensation philosophy, which is to maintain a certain level of competitiveness with the market, the labor market that you compete within. And so a market pricing methodology is most appropriate. What that is just what it sounds like. Looking at all the wage data out in the market to understand the price or value of a given job. So to do that, we look at multiple salary surveys and make those apples to apples comparisons, job by job, and then create composites. We'll put together multiple sources of data to triangulate the going rate for each job in your job catalog. If at any point there's insufficient data, or we don't have quite the same level of confidence in the market data that we see for a smaller number of jobs, we use a practice called slotting. And slotting is essentially, if we look at jobs within the organization that have similar value, where would this job that doesn't have as good of market data fit? And you kind of do a within the company comparison of similar jobs to derive an appropriate value for that job that doesn't have as good of market data. And that's a very common practice. When market pricing is performed, there's usually about 10 to 20% of jobs within any organization that don't have great, reliable, valid data from these wage surveys. As mentioned before, we always do this benchmarking based on the content of each job because job titles can vary so dramatically from organization to organization. And then here you can see the 4 data sources that were used to analyze wages: TechNet, APPA, and Milliman, which are all more industry specific, and then supplemented by a non-industry specific salary survey from ERI, or Economic Research Institute. Okay, any questions before I dive into these findings? Okay. Well, because I performed this study last time, it was interesting to do some kind of past and current comparisons. And one of the things that was most interesting was to see that market rates for industry-specific jobs have increased quite rapidly, by an average of 10% over that period. While non-industry jobs, the value of jobs on average have increased by only about 5%. And researching that a little bit deeper, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and some other entities as well are reporting that power utility workers are considered in high demand, and they project growing labor needs and even potential shortages. And so with those labor shortages, you know, it's simple supply and demand economics. As there's a shortage of skilled labor, the value of each one of those skilled laborers goes up. And that kind of explains that, why those industry-specific jobs value is going up more quickly. So, as a general observation, what I noticed when we got done with all of the analysis of each one of those jobs and deriving a market value for each one of those, and then comparing it to the current pay ranges, we noticed some interesting things. One, Heber Light and Power currently uses its pay ranges quite effectively to manage pay decisions. And one of the indicators of that is the average compa ratio is 1.05. And very few employees are paid out of the established pay range. So to speak onto that a little bit more, the compa ratio is kind of a jargon word in the comp space, but what it really means is if you are paid at the midpoint of your range, your compa ratio would be 1.0. If you're paid above the midpoint, at the higher end of the range, you would be over 1 or under 1 if you are below the midpoint. So when you look at a company, an organization as a whole, you would expect that there would be people all along the spectrum of the pay range. People paid who are paid lower in the range, they're likely new in their role or have a lot less tenure with your organization, maybe lower performers overall. And then you'd have people who are higher in the range. Lots of tenure, high performance, high skilled, and that distribution of pay is very appropriate and is a great way of paying people according to their merit. And so to see an average overall compa ratio so close to 1 is one indication that pay is on an ongoing basis being managed quite well. The pay ranges are being utilized appropriately. Current market rates are on average about 5% above the existing pay ranges that are in place, which indicates simply that as the market is moved and rates have gone up out in the labor market, a small adjustment to the existing pay ranges is necessary to help you maintain that pace, that growth with the external labor market that is relevant to you. Okay, any questions before I move on from here?
Do you want to dive into what you're proposing, and then I have some questions, but I wanted to let you finish first, please.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, you can save the questions at the end if you'd like. That's just fine. So the simplest form of the recommendations are, in order to help Heber Light and Power align your pay practices with your compensation philosophy, is to update the pay ranges accordingly. Your comp philosophy states that you'd like your pay range midpoints to be set within plus or minus 5% of the market median for all roles. And when we say the market median, we're talking about when we go out and do these studies and look at these wage surveys, that data is always represented as a distribution, right? And the median, meaning half of all organizations pay above that point, half pay below that point. So it's a really kind of a central point of wages out there. And so in general, your comp philosophy is we want to make sure that we're not paying too low, we're not paying too high, we're kind of taking a stance is overall to kind of be a middle of the pack contender pay-wise. So the adjustments that are recommended here will help you align your pay ranges and therefore pay practices with that philosophy, that midpoint of the market. And what that looks like on average is that your existing pay ranges will be raised up by about 5.8% overall. Not every range gets this, not every job's pay range is recommended to move the same amount. because, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of the industry-specific skilled labor roles are growing at a much higher rate in value than some of the non-industry roles. But on average, the move is about 5.8%.
Okay, we've got a question,
Yeah.
please.
Yes.
Clay, I guess I speak here. So,
It's
Clay,
Yes.
the data is gathered from kind of what region? Is this specific to to Utah? Is this kind of multi-state region?
Yes. Sorry, that was difficult to hear. But if I understood your question, it was, where is the data coming from? What kind of geographic region does it represent? Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Great. Yeah. So there are a few data sources that we looked at. One is pretty specific to Utah, and the other two are specific more on a regional basis, meaning primarily like Mountain West, and in some instances up to like Pacific Northwest. One thing that we did to help kind of control for that expanded geographic area is to eliminate states like maybe California that we know have, on average, much higher labor costs. So we tried to only include areas, regions of the country that have highly similar labor costs to Utah as kind of that first cut to make sure that all the people, the participants in these studies could be a good peer comparison to Heber Light and Power.
Okay.
Clay, as you did that, as you've worked with other companies, is it normal for a Utah-based entity to be thinking of a 6% or so increase this year, or is that higher than other companies you've worked with, or lower than other companies you've worked with? You mentioned that we do a good job of staying at a comp ratio that makes sense to the plan we've got. With the other companies you've worked with, are people generally increasing more or getting a recommendation to increase more than your recommendation here, or less than your recommendation here?
Yeah, great question. Very good question. I want to make sure that one thing's clear, and then I'll answer that question. One thing to make sure that's really clear is we're not necessarily recommending a change to any individual person's pay in this discussion, right? We're talking about adjustments to the pay ranges that Heber Light and Power will use to make decisions about people's pay, right? If that makes sense. Talking about making sure that the pay ranges, the structures that are used as decision helps for pay decisions are updated to match the market. So it's a little bit difficult to compare company to company because every company has their own setup in terms of pay ranges and how those pay ranges are designed. But that said, this kind of most companies that I've worked with who have established pay ranges already and are making these kind of year-over-year adjustments to keep pace with the market are seeing somewhere in this kind of 3 to 6, 7% adjustment year-over-year.
So
some industries have higher growth, so they're having bigger changes in their pay structures. Some industries have lower wage growth, and they have smaller adjustments year-over-year.
Clay,
Does that answer the question?
Clay,
yes.
Given what you just said on the last answer, these other companies, are these for-profit businesses that you're referring to, or are you talking about non-profit organizations like we are?
Well, in that last, in my response there, I'm kind of talking about my whole book of business, if you will, which is for-profit and non-profit.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't think there's a dramatic difference per se between the two in terms of needing to stay relevant and competitive with the market so that you can attract and retain the right employees. And generally speaking, there's that same desire to keep that competitive level and stay relevant with the market. And so I've not worked with anyone over the past year that didn't need to make updates like this to their pay ranges to keep pace with the market.
Can I also ask, when you eliminated California and used Pacific Northwest or other types of data sources, did you also adjust for overall cost of living differences between those other places and our place?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so this is a really important point. Cost of living and cost of labor are two unique indices, two unique metrics that are used in these types of situations. About 90+% of all organizations, actually probably more like 95% of all organizations, used cost of labor or wages to determine their what they want to do with their pay ranges. Cost of living is really a separate index,
Yes.
Different metric, right? That really tracks the going rate for kind of your average living expenses. They often are correlated and kind of follow each other, but they are separate, and there are many instances across the United States where cost of living can be really high and wages can be low, or the inverse. And so most companies don't weigh cost of living very much into their market pricing or benchmarking of wages. Most companies rely almost exclusively on cost of wages or cost of labor, which is the data that we get from these salary surveys, if that makes sense. So in some ways, the cost of living differences are a little bit not insignificant, but those decisions are weighed with much less weight when determining pay decisions.
So you're basically saying no.
Oh, go ahead.
No, cost of living wasn't factored into this, just cost of wages, right?
Right.
Okay, can I
I gave you the
also
long
ask-
answer, but I wanted to give the context as to why.
I'm trying to understand. Can I ask, I didn't think that inflation was at 5% or 5.2%. It might be pretty close, but did you look at, it just seems from what you're presenting that these pay ranges are increasing faster than inflation. Is that correct?
Yes, and if we had some time, I could pull up a chart and we could look at that. That's usually the case. Over the past 30 years, let's say, if you track the rate of growth in wages versus the rate of growth in inflation, usually wage growth outpaces inflation by just a little bit. We had a couple of years in like 2022, 23, where we had that inverse, and inflation was higher than wage growth.
Right.
We've reversed that. We're back into a place where we have real wage growth, and it's a little bit higher than inflation.
My final question is, how many of our employees are out of range? You said very few. Do you know Carly or Clay?
I would probably show in the chart that he'll show in a minute, I'll bet.
I don't know, it wasn't on the chart in the agenda, at least the big chart, I should say. Is it on one of your other charts? Or just how many employees?
Yeah.
I'll just say we had maybe.
Carly, are you there? Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't include every single chart that was used in this analysis here, just given the public nature of the meeting.
Of course.
But Carly can speak to that.
We did have a couple that were lower in range, newer in position for other reasons.
New hires then.
And new hires. For the most part, everybody stayed in range. We did have, there were a few people that were closer to the top of.
And we looked at that on a
Range.
comparative when we met, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's,
But it was very key. He'll show on the chart that he shows with the comp ratio, you can see how we cluster much better around the midpoint with the proposed new ranges.
So it's the utility line locator, I can see on the last chart here, and maybe the,
Generation.
isn't that the one we looked at there?
substation technician. The
Oh, you
CDB
told
lows.
us.
See
That's
the
from the
those
one
two
way
low
back
ones?
when we met
Okay.
in February.
I think I know which
Let
one.
me check and make sure I know that's right. Let's do utility. Did anybody else have any other questions?
I thought it was that one. It showed.
Okay, if everyone doesn't mind.
What is
Go
actually?
ahead.
I'm sorry. I did think of one because we're looking. It's slide 57, the one that shows the before and after of the comp ratio. I realize it's not everybody because we've pulled out some of them. I get that, but and this might be a question not for Clay. Is his name? Yeah, not for Clay, but for somebody in the room. What? Because I don't remember from the prior time we talked about this. What is the range versus if compa is 1? For instance, is the range from 0.5 to 1.5? Is it from 0.7 to 1.3 on this graph we're looking at that's on slide 27 if we get back, or 57 if we get back to that? Does my question make sense?
Yeah, so are you saying that if the midpoint is 1,
Yeah.
is like...
How big is the
1
range?
Is 1.2 mean that you're over top of range? Is
Right,
that what you're-
exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at. Because we'll see in a second this thing in the board packet, which I think is 2 more slides from here. It'll show, like, we've got some people that were up above 1.2. Does that mean that they're out of the range right now? Because then my follow-up question will be, what is the HR decision that's made if somebody's out of range or at the max of their range? Meaning, if they did a great job, they have no increase at all because they're at their max range anyway. Is that how it works? I think so.
Jason can speak to how when we go through our review process and look at everybody, how we're very careful to keep people from reaching that maximum and being out of range.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I was just saying a one-time payment, because I think it's what he's asking about. So instead of doing an increase,
Yep.
it's just an annual payment. And I don't know if you Jason.
No, but that's, once they get into that top of range, then they don't qualify for a merit increase any longer. What they do qualify for, a one-time merit lump sum if they met all their goals, are good producers and everything else, then they will, of that 3% merit pool that is approved in the budget, then they do still qualify for that merit lump sum, but their salary is frozen.
Could I call merit lump sum in like normal wording? Could I just call that a bonus option? So can I reword what you just said to see if I understand it correctly? If somebody's at the max of their range, there is still the ability in the company to use discretion in that 3% and give a bonus for whether it's retention kind of mentality or whether it's performance kind of mentality. That's still there even if the range is maxed out.
Yes.
Okay. Does that help answer?
That really did. So it looks like we've got 4 positions that are below the line. The energy resources analyst, the distribution systems planner, the utility line locator, and the substation tech. Utility line locator, pretty much the same. That's sad to me because everyone else is so much higher, right? And they're so low. The others have gone up anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 in the pay range of these 4 lowest ones.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I suggest that he goes on with these things so
Oh, I
that
thought he
we
was
can...
done.
No, I don't think he's done, is he? No, he's not
I
done.
thought he was done. Sorry.
I think that, so the rest of us can see what you guys are seeing on your computers, because we don't have them, but...
Clay, please proceed.
Oh, no worries. These are important discussions that you're having. I am essentially near the end here, though. My last point here is simply that and this was kind of by happenstance, but it's a good outcome. The pay ranges that were proposed would move, if they were implemented without making any new pay changes or whatever to individuals, it would bring the average company compa ratio to 1.00, which is essentially, again, just as a reminder, is an indicator that there's a healthy distribution of pay within pay ranges from people kind of below, from kind of the bottom to the top of the range is what that indicates. So that's the end of the study overview and the recommendations. As we move on, we're essentially just looking at some of the visualizations of the outcomes of the study. And that's what you've been looking at in the appendix. You've got a table that there's a lot there, and it's a lot to look at, but the simplest way to kind of see, or the simplest way to look at this is essentially to compare the mid, meaning the midpoint of the pay range on the 2024 side, and the mid over on the 2025 side. Comparing those two values back and forth will help you see the dollar value difference in the recommendation to change the pay range itself.
Okay.
And then I believe this is obvious, and we've already started to have some of these discussions just now, it sounds like, but just to reiterate, these are simply the recommended pay ranges for each one of these roles. But for each incumbent, each person who performs one of these roles, there's kind of the next layer, which is if this is an appropriate and market-based pay range, what is appropriate for the individual performing that role, where in this, low to high, minimum to maximum in the range does that person belong, right? And I think those are some of the conversations you're already starting to have.
Kevin?
Clay, can I just go, I just want to make sure the point you made right before going to this page, please correct me if I'm summarizing this incorrectly. And I'm going to round these numbers, that currently overall the ranges for 2023-24 are at 1.05.
That compa ratio, yeah.
That compa ratio. And based upon the adjustments for 24-25, you're saying an increase of 5.8% will get you to a 1.0 ratio, which is telling me, and maybe you said that up front, so I apologize, is telling me that overall the compa rate, adjustment from 24 to 25 has gone up roughly 10%, give or take.
No. It's
Sure.
5%. Yeah.
Clay, can I take a stab at just because
do you understand my question?
See his face? Can I take a stab at it real fast and then you correct me?
Yes.
So the increase is 5.8. What the 1.05 is saying is that with the current ranges, the company is paying 5-ish, 5-ish% above the average comp ranges, the midpoints. That's kind of the average. With these adjustments, if we raise it by 5.8%, all of those midpoints change in such a way that the existing salaries, if they don't change, will now average out to that 1.0. So it's not saying 5 plus the 5.8. It's saying if you change by 5.8% and adjust all these ranges, the new average of people, because there's nothing about this that's going to change the income of any person unless they then go forward and change in that range. The range, the average moves up, so it's now flat. So what it's saying, 1.05 right now is saying that currently we're kind of like paying above the midpoints, but this adjustment would move all the midpoints to be at where we're at.
Midpoints on average. Clay, do you want to put up the
I apologize not following that, because if the average last year was
Yes, I will. And then the last thing I would
It's not
say
they're
about
not all
that
flat.
is
Some of them go up, some of them go
no,
up
I
slightly
understand,
less.
but if you average it total,
That's still at 5.8%.
Okay, please go ahead.
Sorry, Craig, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're great. Yeah. Sorry, I am having, I can hear a couple of you quite well. Most of you I can't hear very well. So if I start talking over you, feel free to call me out. The point I would make here is one of the kind of underlying pieces here is a kudos to Carly, because the fact that the point that was just made is, if you looked at the 1.05, one indication of that is maybe people are being paid just a little bit over, not maybe, they are being paid a little bit over the current midpoints on average. Now, it's a kudos to Carly, because what that means is we just went out and did all this research on the market and then said, well, this is really what the ranges should be. And what that did is it shifted the ranges just a little bit, and now the average compa ratio is 1.0. In other words, the average is right on kind of the midpoint, which is your comp philosophy. And so Carly, the way that Carly is managing compensation ongoing has been really in tune with the market, really on point, and helping you stay in a competitive place. So that's another kind of one additional indication from.
So
from
Clay,
these metrics here.
again, to go back to this, if 2024 again, what's the term you use? The compa ratio was 1.05. So if we were to take all of those, in fact, your other graph that shows the average, how that would be increasing from 2024 to 2025. So
if you look at all those,
that's telling me if I'm looking at a whole dollar in 2024 average compa ratio versus what's being proposed here, that would make it at a 1.00 ratio. Well, it actually goes up in total dollars, but in terms of the compa ratio, because you're comparing it from one year versus another.
that's because the whole industry's gone up.
That's right. So, in a nutshell, I mean, what this is telling me is to get to this 1.05 to a 1.00 from 24 to 25, you're saying the average overall goes up, or these ratios go up 5.8% from 2024. In order to get that increase
Right.
from one to the next, you're basically saying, yeah.
If you take all those purple dots,
The industry, this is telling me the industry, the increases of the industry is above 5.8%.
Yes, so let me show you this one other
It has
graph
to,
might
in
help
order for
explain
it to
that.
go
That's-
down to 1.0.
That's this one here. And what this one kind of helps you see, this is a histogram, right? It's putting the percent change into these buckets.
Okay?
So on the left, you've got a count of how many jobs have a pay range that is, that is being changed. And then these buckets along the bottom are, a range of percentages. How much is the midpoint of that given job changing year over year? And you can see that a lot of the jobs are only changing, somewhere between 0.5% and 2.5%. And those are likely the non-industry jobs, or the jobs that have a slower growth rate year over year out on the market.
But
And you got this tail that goes out here.
But that's
And
only.
you can see there are some jobs that are there's this supply-demand issue going on with skilled labor and or skilled leadership, industry-specific leadership, that they're having quite a bit higher increases to the range midpoint year over year. So it's not the same amount for every role. In general, a lot of your roles are getting smaller year-over-year changes, and a few are getting quite larger. But the overall effect is that 5.8% increase on average.
Clay, there was something that was eye-opening to me during that meeting where Kendall and I kind of went through these results before it came to the full board. If I can take a stab at saying it again, and then you correct me if I say it incorrectly. The 1.05, I think I had asked the question as far as like, should we be worried about 1.05? And I think your answer was something to the effect of, no, not necessarily. It's kind of a proof of how well the HR department is doing here, in that most of the wages are already closer to the industry increases already, such that when we look at these changes, the reason we have such a spike, or such a histogram spike here in the 0 to call it 4.5, so that gets me 15 out of these histograms here. The reason that there's such a spike in that lower part is because the HR department has already made changes, whether it's through increases or through kind of manual or by hand industry adjustments to most of the people, such that the reason 1.05 becomes a 1 with no change to compensation other than moving midpoints is that we're kind of already there. Is that I remember there being something to the effect of like, no, this is kind of good evidence that they're kind of doing their job already. We're not seeing a wild, crazy out of whack. It's just a matter of that the work that they've done in some cases has moved farther up the midpoint scale, or above the midpoint of the scale, and the Heber Light and Power's policies are to stay within
Plus or
percentage
minus
of
of
that
that,
scale.
right.
So we need to adjust the scale just to reflect what's already been given in compensation increases. Am I saying that correct?
Yes. I think that is a part of the story. Maybe not the complete story, but yes, I think that's an accurate statement. And then to your point, these ones that are much larger are simply reflective of how much the market is moving for some roles, and like I said, it specifically was industry-specific leadership roles and highly skilled labor, like journey positions and stuff that have these much larger year-over-year changes.
The reason I wanted to clarify that, Clay, was the public obviously can listen to this meeting, but also the employees of the company can listen to this meeting. And I'm trying to make sense of, we've got a number of other things that are not your purview going on with the company right now, but I want it to be relatively clear that at least with how the industry has moved, we've done a pretty good job of staying with industry rates, but also not in all cases. In some cases, the industry has moved much faster than what the internal HR department has been able to either do because of adjustments or because of the pay ranges that may have capped or limited their ability to adjust. And that's where you're coming from. You're not recommending right now wild changes to actual salaries so much as you're recommending if you want to keep the median of these ranges where you've said you want to keep it, Heber Light and Power, where plus or minus a couple percent, you're going to need to adjust these ranges because some of these ranges have moved a lot faster than you've been able to move the salaries.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Kevin,
and I'll reiterate that
opportunity.
point just one more time. That my recommendations don't necessarily have anything to do with the incumbents, the people in the jobs already. My recommendations have to do more with helping you have pay ranges that reflect your desired target place out in the marketplace, right? And so the comp ratio metric that keeps coming up, that's kind of a secondary metric that we put on top of, now that we know what the ranges are, where do our people sit within the ranges currently? And that's what the comp ratio represents.
So,
but I'm not necessarily recommending any changes to individual pay per se, right? That's for Heber Light and Power to decide based on individuals' merit, qualifications, whatever.
Let me
My
ask
recommendations are specific to making sure your pay ranges are designed in a way that
Clay, let me
decisions in the future.
Clay?
Clay, let me ask a question, and anyone else can answer.
Yes.
Is the 5.8 based upon the average based on just number of employees, or is it based upon the actual, if you added up all of these average, call it the median, wage range?
You're saying.
So is it based upon the total wage range, or is it based upon just the number of employees? Maybe that's where I'm getting cut. Which
it's
one is
essentially the average of what you're seeing here on your screen.
Right.
If you were to look at
number of
all of
employees?
these changes, they're represented in these buckets here.
So the non-weighted average as far as actual payroll dollars then?
Yes, because again, my recommendations are not necessarily based on the people and what they're currently paid. It's based on making sure your reference point to the market, your pay ranges, are where they should be.
Great. And Clay, a follow-up question. Your slide 2 said, the compensation philosophy is that pay range midpoints are set plus or minus 5%. Are any of the recommended ranges that you've given back to us above 0? So what I'm asking is, are all of these between minus 5% and 0, or are some of the ranges that you're giving us up to 5% above market rate?
Great question. Yeah, generally speaking, the target is, the recommendations here are on target, right?
A zero to a theoretical match of industry.
Essentially, right on the median was the target that we were shooting for these. The only place that might differ in some ways is if in deep discussion with Carly, comparing side by side job descriptions, expectations, qualifications, whatever, to the benchmarks out in the market. If a given job within Heber Light and Power tended to have a higher scope and scale, it might get a little bit of a premium, right, to reflect that comparison, or the inverse. If a job within Heber Light and Power tends to be a little bit smaller, scope and scale, qualifications, whatever, might get a little bit of a discount from the median out in the market. But generally speaking, the answer is yes. We're targeting right on the midpoint of the market.
Right. Can I, and this might be a question, you can verify like the theory, but I think it's a question actually for the folks in the room. Does that theoretically mean that to maintain the compensation philosophy of Heber Light and Power, we could potentially come lower than these range recommendations by up to the 2.5% and still be within what we say we want to do from a company compensation philosophy? Answer to anybody that asks
Pay
this.
is separate than ranges. I think that's what we
Right.
have.
If the range doesn't,
if the range,
if the
and-
range, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
let's
I think
say
that plus or minus there is flexible just because,
that's not
this
really
is always
driving the
like-
salary anyway right
and it's
now.
always a moving target as to we could look at a slice of this, down the
Yep.
road and something could be different, so it's just that
Cool.
flexibility.
That was the theory, because I want there's two parts of me here. One is I want employees to feel good that generally speaking they're being heard and understood as far as industry, but I'm also trying to balance the other half of my mind saying we continue to talk about losses as a company, we continue to talk about rate increases, and I'm having a hard time in my mind saying we should move all the ranges, and I think the way I'm truing it up is saying, well, moving the range doesn't actually mean we're spending any more right off the bat.
Well, I need to
It gives the opportunity for you to spend more if, or you, not pointing a finger, but you as a company to spend more
If
because
a
the
given
range might be
employee
there.
fits in that.
If a given employee fits there. But we could potentially think of these range recommendations and we as a board, artificially move those midpoints down up to 2.5% and still stay within our compensation philosophy. Because it's not actually
unassigned
changing.
person from the
Right.
the job title.
Depending on which it
Let's
is.
say I've got to hire a new IT guy.
Yeah.
My new range based on 2025 salary ranges is literally $10,000 higher than what my range was when I hired my last guy. So if I go to market, I know I'm probably paying like $10,000 more today than what I paid that guy right out of the gate because that's what the market sits today.
Right.
So that's what this range is. That gives me that opportunity there. It doesn't mean I have to spend that much. It just says that I can based on what competitive market is showing.
I still like to go back because I'm trying to understand, and I know I'm probably jumping ahead on this. I'm just trying to understand, and I understand these are ranges based upon job titles. I understand that. But if we compared, and maybe this is a Clay question or anyone else that can answer.
Let me just correct one thing. It's not based on job title, it's based on the entire job
Excuse me.
description.
Correct. So I said that wrong.
I said that wrong, actually.
I summarized it wrong. So based upon the job description, okay, for 2024 versus what's being proposed, taking the average, range for each of these job descriptions, what is the total percentage that has gone up? What I'm trying to get a handle of, I understand what we're focusing on is this range for individual employees, and it all depends upon the individual, and some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower. But what is the overall increase going from 2024 to 2025 based upon this? I don't know. Is it 10%?
No.
Is it 5%? Is it 2%? I have no
The
idea.
average range, so if you just take the
Sorry,
average
how's it
of the ranges, it's 5.8% increase of the ranges.
But he said that that's based upon the number of positions. I'm looking whole dollar increase. What's the
There is no
increase?
dollar increase
I understand that.
necessarily from. Yeah.
We're not necessarily plugging that value into an individual employee.
I understand, but it's avoiding to me the big the big question is how much, and I understand this is not saying that's exactly what it's going to go up. How much is overall wages going to go up,
Good question.
right? If everything was just kind of, mirrored or whatever.
The overall wages will go up roughly what you approved in the budget, which is the 3% merit pool. That's where it would ultimately be capped at. Because all this is a range to keep an employee within that base. But you guys in the budget approved that 3% merit pool of the overall wages of Heber Light and Power in the budget.
So that's already been approved and done,
Yes.
plugged in.
Well,
Along with the COLA,
Almost there.
that was approved
Right.
in that budget. So that's what actual
But
wages
you're-
changes to a dollar value.
You're saying the merit,
It's
this,
our regular merit process. We'll go in with the 3% merit pool that was planned in the budget and just say, just like we did last year, we're not increasing somebody's pay unless we are looking at a few people who are considerably out of range according to their peers, then we'll consider that as an administrative adjustment to their pay. But the overall employee base, we're just proceeding as normal and saying, hey, how did you do this year? You were at 0.97% so you were just below your midpoint. You did a really good job. You met your expectations. You're going to get a 3% merit pool or
that
merit
gets them up to the
increase,
100,
and that'll put
1.0.
you just right at.
Or in some cases,
At
might put them a little above the
It might
midpoint.
put them a little bit above, but that's where we're kind of like, managing as much as we can, to stay pretty close around.
This study just
but-
verifies for us that we're
But
staying where we need to be.
what I'm,
So Karen, let me.
I'm going to try and ask it another way. I apologize because I'm trying to get a sense of. I understand in reality, okay, you can give much lower increase, but just stepping back and taking everyone out of position, and we're not talking about individuals, but overall we're talking about, a budget in 2020, not a budget, an industry norm, if we're going to call it, that we're trying to stay within. Okay, was X in 2024, what would it be in 2025? If you had to go out there and just hire new people all over again from 2024 to 2025, what is that increase?
It's
1.0.
side by side
So
chart,
are you
the
looking
green,
for
blue.
like the sum of the
1.0.
midpoints for
This-
2024 and the sum of the midpoints for 2025 and what
Yes,
that difference is?
yes, that's exactly what I'm
In
like.
24, it was 1.05,
And
and
what
now it's 1.0.
No, what percentage is that
Right.
increase?
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
They're-
the average
Oh, I see.
5.8.
I get your question finally. Sorry, it took me that long. Can I try to reword it?
Yeah.
So instead of the average of the increases, that's the 5.8. If we took all the midpoints before and all the midpoints after, so if we literally
And
took
do you
slide
want us to do the
54,
math in dollars of
and
this 5.8%?
if we added up the columns in slide 54
Yes.
and combined
Yeah.
those two, and
What is
and
that percentage
what is the
increase?
difference? So what is the potential
I don't know, is
dollar
that 3
increase?
or 10%? I'm
If
just
it
trying to get a
was-
sense.
You're talking about this midpoint average, or total average versus
Which
this
another way to
midpoint
say that
average.
is if everybody moved based on the amount
Yes.
we're moving
To
them,
their midpoint.
what would the dollar increase be?
It gives a sense of the
potential.
what is the
Potential
overall
dollars.
potential. What is the overall
Cost to the
industry generally has been going up. I understand that our increases can be below that, above that, whatever the case may be. It's going to be different.
I think the only reason that this graph, and this is the one, it's 2 slides after this, is this one here that's got the wages that we just saw. I think the only reason that would be hard to do here is this doesn't tell us how many people fit in those roles. So if we do what you're asking, if we took those midpoints and averaged and added them up and then compared them, we might be wildly wrong because there's only one IT specialist, I'm pretty sure, but there might be
Lineman,
several line crew foremen that we don't have the number here. So doing the thing you're asking, I think actually might make us get wrong results because I think it will highly weight the highest wages on here because there might be more of the lower wages.
So perhaps
We could probably hit a blow-up though.
let's bring this back and let's get some of these questions answered. And I don't know if you want to do it in personnel committee, but where we're weighting the number of job titles, right, per employee, adding up the two separate midpoints so you can see that. And then I'd like to add on top of that, how will it affect our fiscal year 26 budget, especially for the new hires that are out of range right now? Because I'm assuming you'd want to bring them in to range. And I'm really concerned about the lowest wage earners, right? I mean, obviously they can't get a home, they can't even rent on these low wages, right? They'd have to be living with somebody else. You're not going to be able to rent at $51,000 at a minimum. You might be able to rent at $71,000, but you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
The lowest wages are the ones I'm always concerned about, and I know that they may not have qualifications to think that they should be paid more, but we do have cost of living issues in our valley, and that's where I'm coming from. I'd really like to kind of pull out those lowest wage earners, see how many there are, see how we might bring them up to that 5.8 or maybe even a little higher, and see what the budget effects could be. You see what I mean? Just for those lowest wage earners.
I already administratively did that with the results of this.
So wait, you've already
So those blue stakers, I've made that adjustment.
You've already made it to what's being proposed here?
Yes.
So they're at least at their minimum on the utility line locators?
Yes.
Okay, but that's still not that much, Jason, for their minimum.
No, I know, but we brought them within the bottom boundary of midpoint.
There wasn't that much of a difference to bring in. It was less than $300. You see what I mean?
I'm just saying,
I
I made that.
appreciate
That's what the
that.
industry's paying.
I appreciate that, but
I mean,
that means that they can't afford to live here on their own either, you know?
and in the budget, I was given the direction to manage the midpoint with the 3% merit pool. And believe me, you can ask these managers how I push back on them. And, you know, and they take the beating from the employee usually, but I mean, your directive is to manage the midpoint of this scale, and that's what we do. We do our very best to manage the midpoint.
Can I ask two follow-up questions? I'm sorry.
And that's why you see,
I wrote them down. I won't
but that's why you see
my-
these numbers of this splatter chart of being close to that 1.0.
Or 1.0.
This may or may not help explain kind of where I think I'm trying to come from the perspective of if the industry, and I'm not taking just specific to this, any industry out there, whatever, you know, if a study was to be done and it showed that the industry, you know, year over year, these average wages, if you had to go out and hire someone, you know, and put them right in the middle, right? Let's just, you know, is 10%. I'm not saying that's what it is here,
Right.
okay? And you, for 1 year over year, the effective overall increase to the payroll, you know, fixed payroll, you didn't hire new people, went up 3%. That makes a big difference in terms of, for me, to the layperson going, you know, complaining about 3% increase, yet the industry's gone up 10%.
Yeah.
I mean, that says something. That's what I'm trying to get an understanding is what has the industry overall gone up in these average? And the way this is done, that for me, the 5.8% doesn't make, we're not comparing apples to apples.
I guess I completely disagree with you. I think we are comparing apples to apples, and we're getting our ranges to where they're competitive with the market.
You've got the
So
expert that knows how to
if I wanted to go hire a lineman in Burns, Oregon.
The issue, I agree with you that this study does it that exactly, okay, but it's not telling you really what has the industry done overall. These positions are going up. That's what I'm hearing more than.
If we went clear to not just, you know, if we go back to that study, so, you know, Clay used, you know, those three, you know, mostly, you know, public power type indices. APPA is a national database to go pull wages from. But, you know, they parse it to our general area. So Milliman is co-ops and public power utilities in Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And so, you know, am I going to go get a lineman that's working for LADWP? No way. I mean, their wages are much higher, but they got to live in Los Angeles, you know. So
right, and those are bad comparisons.
Those are bad comparisons.
Yeah.
So the comparisons are who we could actually recruit and who we'd actually lose people to. You know, I could lose a lineman to LADWP. If he's just chasing money and thinks that that's going to get him money, then he'll go there.
I'm trying to look at it from the big picture perspective. If they had data out here that said, you know, over a 3-year period, it's going up 10% every year. Okay, these 2.5% increases or 3 whatever over time is not going to keep up with that at all.
No,
it shows a trend of what's happening out there overall. Not that we're going to turn around or use that data to give 10% per year increases.
No,
but it at least gives us a picture as to what's really going on, because the 5.8 is not a whole dollar number that you could say.
Not a whole dollar number to what our current wages are. No, I mean it's based on
that's the percent. That's the percent I'm trying to understand what the industry has gone up year over year, and it's. I apologize. A little frustrating. I can't get a simple answer as to what that is.
Well, we can show you what total wages are going up, year over year from a percentage basis.
Yeah.
No. That
I think
I'm talking about.
Go ahead, Clay.
Go ahead.
I think what I would say, and again, I'm just having a hard time hearing every word, but if you were looking for kind of the trend of what's happening in the industry, and this is a pretty simple way to see it. Look at any industry-specific job on this table and just compare side by side. What was this midpoint that in the past represented the market median on the left, and the midpoint here in the proposed range, which now represents the current midpoint out in the market, and the difference between the two,
Clay,
as you look at all these different jobs, that is the representation of how much is the market moving,
Clay,
in the industry.
So
yeah.
All I'm trying to get at is that's a whole bunch of data, a whole bunch of individual salaries. Give me a percentage of what that means to Heber Light and Power.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing any of what you're saying.
Lights off. Yeah.
So sorry.
Oh, no, there we go.
It's on now.
Can you hear me now? I can scream. Can you hear me?
Clay?
He's not.
I'm not sure if I lost audio. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear anybody anymore.
Clay, I can hear you, but can't hear them.
Oh, okay. All right, so not just me.
No, I'm having the same difficulty that you're having in making out.
Are you there?
What they're saying.
Are you guys there?
Okay.
Hello.
It's not picking up. Was that a mic or just a speaker?
Both.
We just found out the problem of the whole question.
It's alright, give me 1 second.
He hasn't even heard half of what you said, so that's a problem.
Clay, can you hear us?
Now,
Oh,
Mayor.
this is not going to be good.
No, now, Mayor, go ahead.
No.
Clay, can you hear us? Clay.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay,
Okay,
Kevin,
great.
go for
This
it.
is back.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Kevin.
Okay.
So
Whoever just spoke just now, that was really clear.
Clay, this is Kevin. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
So the essence of my question is if you took those midpoints and applied them to the actual positions in Heber Light and Power, just to get a sense as to what the overall industry, norms have increased from year to year. I know this doesn't reflect the individuals. They're all going to be different. But it gives a picture as to what the industry is doing in, year over year.
So are you talking about like the percent increase calculation between those two midpoints? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes,
Okay.
based on, if you apply each of those to all of the positions within Heber Light and Power, okay, and just assume they were all at the midpoint in 2024, and assume they're all at the midpoint. I know that's not correct, but just assume that they're, what would it be? What would the overall whole dollar increase be from 24 to 25 midpoint, weighted for all of the positions, not average, not taking it. Yeah.
I think
I
lost you when you use the word dollars, because the dollar is right in front of you.
It's
But
a
I think
total.
you're
The
talking
total.
about the percentage increase between them, right? And then maybe like do an average. of that
All
percentage
I'm
increase.
trying to understand is a percentage of
Increase.
this data, what it means to Heber Light and Power as a potential, right? If we hired everybody in 2024
A midpoint.
based on that midpoint,
Mhm.
and we increased everybody to 2025 to the midpoint, what is that overall increase?
But we're not doing that.
I know we're not doing that.
Let me
It
see if
gives
I can
a-
summarize.
I know it doesn't.
That is that 5.8% figure. Because that 5.8% is just what you're describing. If you looked at the percent difference
Okay.
between 2024 mid and 2025 mid,
Average across the whole catalog.
yeah, it would be that 5.8%.
Kevin, if the delta is risk, right, and if 5.8 is the total average of the entire portfolio, and if we approved a 3% increase total of the portfolio, then that delta risk will only be a 2.8% difference, right? Is that the number
Right.
you're looking for? It'd be a 2.8%
No.
Above the
increase to
3.
the total. The increase of the total, that would be that risk, that delta, when we're not maximizing.
No, I
because
think,
of.
I think he's asking for the value in dollar of the 5.8%. Is that what you're asking for?
Well, I think.
Look-
Tell me this is what you're asking for, Kevin. We're all speaking different languages. and all
Yes.
that math.
so.
Si quieres hacerlo en
Okay.
español, si quieres hablamos.
Let me take a crack at it. Right, we have one CFO, we have one asset manager, but we have how many energy system operators, Emily?
5.
So we have 5 of these guys. The midpoint went from, call it 80 to 85. So the dollar impact of that change is $25,000.
5 times that.
Yeah,
Correct.
so $25,000. So if we
Correct.
take,
But that doesn't even get to it. because-
That's assuming they're all
because
on the
two of those
midpoint.
are apprentices,
But just-
and they're in a different
right, you're just trying to
category
spitball a
altogether.
budget impact.
I'm interested
I'm
in
not-
that too, by the way.
Okay.
He's using that budget impact as an industry.
I'm not looking for, you have someone that you just started a job and therefore they're way low. I'm not looking for that difference between that and this. I'm looking for, this is a measure, the way I'm looking at this is a measure of the industry norm, right, that you're doing a study on. And if we weight that based upon the actual positions, okay, I know that ties to people, but
Yeah.
ignore the people.
Yeah.
If you ended up with a total, I don't know what that is. What's the total payroll?
This year it's 8.138 million in our budget.
Let's just say for the sake of argument that these totals they're not gonna match that at all. But if those were, I'm gonna make the numbers easy. If those were 10 million, and we do the same thing here, weighted for all positions, and it's 12 million, there's 2 million, there's 20%.
It's gonna be 5.8%
I think no,
bigger.
but I think what you're trying to get at is, I'm not doing a better job than you are. Okay. If we look at, right, our energy system operators, it's pretty close to the 5%.
I'm not so
But-
concerned about each
Yeah, but
individual
if we
one,
look
I'm
at-
concerned about the total.
But then, so
That's all.
if we look at like generation mechanic from 78 to 91, he's way more than 5%.
No, it's whatever these numbers are. It doesn't matter. I'm
Yeah,
just
but-
asking, the study is done, if I was using an analogy, maybe this is a terrible analogy. If we were measuring the value of homes, right, from one year to the next, 50 different homes, all different types, but there are 50 specific type of homes. An appraiser did an appraisal in 2024 versus 2025 and compared those numbers and said
The market went up.
the market went up by 10%. Doesn't mean you have to sell it for that or that you're going to even get that. Right? I'm not interested in getting too into the specific other than the measurement of what is the industry doing. The industry's gone up how much percent? I'm being told that earlier on, the 5.3 or 8 was it? The 5.8 was not
5.2.
was not weighted per each, number of employees per the mid 2024 versus the mid 2025.
Okay, we need to get that
Okay.
figure. And I'm very happy that you can see that. I'm just saying I want to know budgetary impacts. Not so much, I don't know if it'll be that much this year, but I would like to know what the budgetary impacts would be this year. I mean, obviously there's some already, but for next year especially, that's what I'm trying to get a handle on. And I'm sure it has to do with this same total that you're asking for. So, Carly, is there any way you could work with Clay and try to bring back what Kevin's asking and show us just budgetary impacts for increasing the mid-range, given any kind of idea that you would have on those that you would think could achieve at that midpoint or higher in performance evaluations that are forthcoming yet this year?
And I have 4 questions.
Okay, there's 2 questions.
Jason's got an answer to that.
That might make a difference.
The budgetary impacts are literally controlled by the board because
That's what
yes,
we want to know.
we are shifting to midpoint, but with the 3% merit pool and what was approved in the budget for total labor with that 3% merit pool, we are managing within that 3%. It doesn't matter even what the midpoint is at this point because we're just managing to a midpoint that the board is good with. And we're getting as close to that midpoint as possible. And we have employees that are below that midpoint. We have employees that are well above that midpoint. We have long-term employees that their wages have been frozen for years. But that's not increasing the overall.
Maybe that's another question.
That's one of my questions.
There you go. We need to see who's in longevity increase. That's what they
And
call
Jason
it.
and Mayor, the data that I'm asking for me has no bearing on whatsoever
Okay.
my vote for the budget increase on that, but it's to just give a clear picture for me.
Okay.
What is the industry doing overall? And
Benchmarking
be nice-
the industry
a
against Heber
benchmark-
Light and Power's increase or change.
no, it's just
No.
what is based on this study. What is the overall? What the industry's going up X percent every year. At the same time we're doing these, I'd like to know that data.
Yeah.
Just as a reference point, because to me that's the future. If hypothetically we end up with 10% every year,
Do you
something's going to give.
Do you want to
Right.
go back more than just 1 year or
No,
going forward?
no.
You don't.
I'm not looking to make extra.
Shouldn't there
Well,
be
extra
a
work or-
report
Okay.
that has that in it?
You're gonna love my questions.
Okay,
But it's
so Aaron, let's do
nationwide.
Aaron's
I think
questions
that's what he's
so that we
looking
can
for. I
come
think
back
that's-
and have better
Okay, I
understanding.
have 2 simple questions and
We've
then I'm
seen
going to
wages
ask for
go
2
way high
things.
in the Northeast and go down here.
Yeah.
So it's just, doing this for the last 20 years, I mean, like literally you'll see that, if you could see wages get really high in the Northeast in that APBA data and see them just levelizing flat through the Midwest or the Great Basin. And so, this is specific to our region. The best that, Clay could make it work within our region. And so, that would be the risk is, you know, you guys decide to fire everybody and rehire them. You're going to be competing at that rate to get people from a Colorado co-op or something. So
It's understandable. I think it's a simple, it should be very easy to put together that data point to just show, yes, we're recommending X, but here's what the industry has done based, not industry nationwide, this specific area that is using as the data.
Yeah.
That
For this
doesn't have to do
report.
anything with this comp. I don't think it has anything to do with comp ratio. I'm sorry to interrupt. Finish up.
we're talking about two different things, comp ratio versus.
Yeah, it's something that it does because Clay took that into account, but it might not be reflected in the numbers.
Okay.
They took it into account, but it might not be the actual number change.
Please
Okay,
finish.
here's my questions. Clay, can we get from you? You mentioned 3 classes of people while you were talking. Classes of people sounds wrong. You mentioned 3 groups. Just go with me. You said there's industry workers, there's non-industry, and there's industry leadership. Can you tell us the market change for those 3 groups? Not necessarily right now if you don't have it, but could you come back to those 3 groups? Because you said we have workers that are non-industry, we expect that their ranges probably didn't change as much. We have workers that are industry, we expect their ranges did change quite a bit because you're telling us the industry went up. And then we also have workers that are classified the way you're classifying them as industry leadership, which we should expect to go up even faster, potentially. Can you tell us those 3 numbers, either right now or later?
Yes.
If it's not right now, then I've got more questions.
I mean, it would take me just a minute, but I could do it.
Hold it for right now.
If you would like it in real time.
Hold it for right now. I'll ask 2 more questions because they're for inside this room. So in the way that Heber Light and Power works, Jason and Carly, do you have the ability to override the 3% merit pool if someone is outside of the range and the range moves? So meaning, to true them up into the range, can you spend more than the 3%? In total. If you had enough people that were below the range and we moved enough ranges, could you spend more than 3%?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's employee.
That's good to know.
It's employee specific.
I don't mean
right?
employee specific. I mean, if we gave you, let's say, hypothetical, a 3% merit pool for the entire company, but most people are below the range, we raise enough ranges that moving the people just into the range is going to be 4%. Can you do that without coming back and asking for more money? I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes. That's what I thought. So theoretically, we could have more than 3% salary impact each year if the ranges, if the people that are working for us are below the range and we move the range enough. That's important to know. Next thing. I know that it's impossible to know, and this is a question probably for you. I know it's impossible to know how many people will actually see salary increases because we don't know what their merit looks like. We don't know what that process is going to look like. But there are people we know, and there's a count you've got or somebody's got of people that have not gotten an increase. You mentioned them a second ago. Have been capped for years. They've not gotten an increase. Maybe they've got a bonus, but they haven't gotten an increase. We do know how many of those people we're talking about raising their range right now. And we could tell you that those people are going to have an increase because they're now going to be in a range, so they might qualify where they didn't last year. Does that make sense?
Let me just make sure that the board is in full understanding of this and my authority.
Yeah.
So in these ranges, if you see like the blue stakers, you're severely underpaying them. Then I made that administrative adjustment to get them to the midpoint level.
Yep.
Okay. And if there's any other outliers, I don't remember all of them right now off the top of my head, but that adjustment has been made. And 2, somebody who is at the top of their scale or near the top of their scale to a point where me as a general manager feel like they are too close to the top of their scale to qualify for a percentage increase in their overall salary, then they do qualify for a one-time merit lump sum for that year, if they qualify for that.
Yeah.
And so that's what they would get. But they qualify for any cost of living increase that you guys give them, because that's just keeping up with the wage scales and kind of the inflationary practice of this. And so those people are getting those cost of living increases.
Sure.
So they just don't qualify for that merit increase that could take them outside of that range of scale. I mean, I take it very seriously, those budget directives to manage to midpoint and, you know, to pay people within their salary scale. I mean, you know, and that's just, you know, I'm kind of a hardliner on that, but we don't have anybody that we're paying over scale. But we do have several that are frozen, yes.
Yeah, you can't pay over scale, right? Because if they're at their frozen, you have the ability to give them a bonus. What I'm saying is, I know we can't understand the total impact because we can't right now say who's going to qualify or not for merit. But what we can count right now is how many people are frozen, and if we move this range, are not frozen anymore. We can count that right now.
Yeah.
Do you know that number? Because that would be the best approximation for how much the salary will instantly increase.
And that's
right?
Yeah, and that's job by job, and
that would be helpful for me to know.
we had, I'm just gonna go off of just kind of memory here, which is always scary, but we may have had 7 or 8 that were completely frozen, and with this 5.8 adjustment to the scale,
they won't be anymore.
No, we still probably have, you know, 2 or 3 that were right at the max, you know, or people that, based on the previous scale, I could not get anybody to fill that position unless I paid over scale. And so they're at top of scale now. And that's the problem with the labor market right now. Like, you know, I go out with certain jobs. I'm not just competing with public power entities. We're competing with, you know, the world. And, you know, there are just certain positions that in order to even get them in the gates, they're already well above midpoint with that starting position, because in order to get them from what the competitor was paying them, that's just where we needed to land.
Yeah.
And, you know, when that happens, Carly and I work very diligently with Clay to, you know, say, well, you know, the next time you do this, that particular position has really climbed, and, you know, the scale will change, but you are paying within the scale, even though it might be a top of scale. So
that makes really good sense. So the next one's easy question. Can I get this slide? And I think it'd be useful for the entire board, but I particularly want it. Can I get this slide with 2 more columns? The first of the 2 more columns is compare the 2 mids. Give me just the delta, just the percent change.
For each
next
category.
For every one of these, another column, right? Add another column. The next column is comparison of the 2 mids. The next column is count of people in that role.
Yeah.
Because if you could give us that, I think we could feel really good. We could do our own math of what Kevin's trying to ask. It isn't, and Kevin, I'm tuning into what you're saying. It's an impact on the company, but it isn't industry. The industry is, can we get the non-industry increase, the industry increase, and the industry leadership increase? If we had that plus this, we could then understand whether we're doing the right thing. Here's why. This is my last question. This is my last thought. And I think it's interesting that we're talking about this now, and we talk about the budget separately, Jason. You keep reminding us of the 3% merit pool. This is why I want to understand this. I'm a little bit worried that if the industry is going up consistently above 3%, and it sounds like it is, I don't have all the math, but it sounds like it is, and we keep giving you 3% every time, if those 2 things are true, over time, your decision must be aligned with rewarding the highest performers and the people that have the most, potentially have the most company knowledge. Call it tenure, but it might not be tenure, but potentially have the most inherent knowledge. The risk there, my risk factor, the reason my alarm bells are going off is, if industry continues to go higher and we keep giving you 3% or something lower than industry, over time, call it the next 15 years, we will end up with highly tenured, highly paid, some positions, and most people, most of the company will be below range or brand new with no industry knowledge, which doesn't set us up as a company very well for a Jason who's been here long enough that we need to think about potentially a Jason replacement, right? We may not have those people in the organization because we couldn't ever keep them here. To keep the higher performers, we had to keep spending more of that 3%. Those lower folks didn't get anything. That didn't happen last year. I'm not accusing. I'm saying that over time, we have to understand
Understand that we
industry
need to
pressure
raise that.
versus merit pool pressure, right? Because if we keep giving you less merit pool than industry, we will shape this company to be highly tenured, highly skilled, and we will lose a lot of industry knowledge over time.
My opinion. But in order to manage to that and to some of the other concerns that I hear around the table, what is one of the biggest contributing factors is maybe a percent or two increase to a merit pool, yes, but it's managing to midpoint. Because right now we are managing to midpoint. I mean, and we're doing it the very best we can, and
With the 3% merit
with
you're
the 3%,
providing.
and you can see it with these numbers. I mean, we are the vast majority of our employees are splatter dotted around that midpoint range, and so just something for the board to think about is, with what you're saying, is that the right philosophy to manage to midpoint or to recruit high-level talent? You're not going to do it managing to midpoint. You've got to do it to manage to, the upper end of scale. If you really want to retain the people that are looking, and, that's the philosophy, because right now the philosophy is manage to midpoint. It's been that way for years. You can tell by the numbers that, Carly and the other department heads have done a great job managing the labor pool to that midpoint level. And, that's likely where the risk mostly lies. I mean, you raise that overall guidance to the employees that it's okay to be in the upper end of the scale, just not pay above that, then your wages are going to shift less to midpoint and more to the upper end of the scale.
Right. And another way to run the business, not saying the better way, but it's just another way, is to say, instead of managing to midpoint, hypothetical, don't stone me, but
we're just having
hypothetical,
a conversation. Yeah.
if we managed below endpoint, over time, we would end up with less tenure, less specialty, but more lower rank. One positive of lower rank, as I'm thinking of a retirement last year and a potential retirement in the next couple of years, a positive of that over time is that we have more people to pull from because they're not at max, they're not frozen.
Right.
They continue to stay with the company every year because they get a raise every year because they're lower in the range, right?
Yeah.
We end up with more institutional knowledge over time, but we probably don't end up with superstars, to your point, because superstars are going to be more expensive. So it's just an important thing to understand that it's super confusing to me. And I was in the meeting with Kendall. I think, didn't we ask for the column with the comparisons? We didn't end up with the column with comparisons. But I think, Kevin, to your point, and you're so good at not being frustrated, but I think you probably are. I am having a hard time with understanding how we can make a decision if we don't know what the industry did. Because it doesn't tell me which of the two companies we're trying to build. Are we trying to build a company of superstars knowing we don't have backfill? Or are we trying to build a company of institutional knowledge, which theoretically is cheaper over time, and also theoretically is better because they have some kind of a loyalty to the company? And we can't answer that question with you right now because we don't know what the managed to midpoint looks like, because we don't know what the industry did. So I'll go back to that first question, which was, can we get the non-industry, the industry, and the leadership? Because I think with that, plus this slide, we could probably understand, what are we trying to build here?
Well,
and you're doing a good job of managing it. I'm not questioning that at all. I'm just saying, as you manage that, it's going to direct toward one of these two types of companies. And I'm hearing you loud and clear say, we're trying to retain talent and skill set, which means over time, we're going to have a hard time filling in people as they retire.
If I could just add,
it's a risk.
On that spreadsheet, the two, with your two columns, all you have to do is add a third column that multiplies the delta by the number.
Yeah, it's a weighted change.
By the positions, and you'll have a total there.
But that still doesn't tell us industry. That tells us impact on this company this time with this change. I want to know industry as well.
If I can just pipe in, one trouble with that is,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well,
there's going to be a problem with it.
We're using this term, what the industry is doing, but we have to define what you mean when you say industry.
That's where I was gonna go.
Right? Are we talking just
Clay,
about
what
the
I
jobs
mean-
at
Clay, what
Heber
I
Light
mean
and
with
Power?
industry-
Because there are many, many additional jobs not represented here
Yeah.
that are part of the power industry, right?
Yeah.
And also, what is our reference for starting and ending when we're saying, what change is happening in the industry? Are we looking only at these salary surveys, or are we comparing things like the pay ranges that we've been using, right? There's still some definition that needs to go into what we mean by industry.
Yeah, and Clay, I don't want you to go do more work. I want you to tell us what you did, if that makes sense. You mentioned we have non-industry, we have industry, and industry leadership. I want to say, what I'm asking is, what was the result for non-industry, industry, and industry leadership? Like, what did you see already? Don't change your time frame. Don't change who you asked, how you did it. Just what did you see?
Yeah. So if we're looking at, and again, the assumptions here are, when we say industry, we would agree that basically these pay ranges for each job have been designed to mimic or represent the industry rates that are out there, right? Does that make sense? Because what we did to design these ranges in the first place is go out and analyze for each one of these jobs what is being paid out in the industry. And then we've triangulated that to a midpoint that is represented here for each job. So the midpoint of each range is intended to show us what industry is, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we understand all that, and we really appreciate you helping us get more information. Aaron, I think you've got one more question, and then we can.
Clay, I think
on.
you're right. I understand what you're saying. This is per job description. What I don't know is general manager here. Let me pick on general manager because you're sitting in the room. Is general manager here specific to power industry general managers, or is this any general manager? I'm pretty sure it's power industry, but I don't know that. So that's why I'm asking if you can tell me which of, and I don't want to say which of these. I don't want there to be responses back. I just want to say for the let's say an office worker. That's the wrong word, but let's say there's an office worker in your wage study, and the way you did the math, the way you looked at the industry, you figured that an office worker was generally replaceable with another office worker inside or outside the power industry. Great, that would tell you that's a non-industry job. Obviously, line crew foreman is an industry job. So if you can bucket the industry ones, the non-industry ones, and the industry leadership ones, the three groups you talked about, and tell me what happened in the industry study you did with those three groups, we'll understand where the pressure is coming from. I think, listening to you, I think the pressure is coming from industry jobs and more so from industry leadership jobs.
Yeah.
But I don't have those numbers, so I'm having a hard time understanding why we would want to change. Not why, I understand why. I'm having a hard time defending why because I can't see the number. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. So, and again, we're making some assumptions here. But if we were to just break down the midpoint changes year over year by category, and again, we have to do it by average because we're grouping together quite a few, right? The industry leadership is growing the most at the fastest rate, 7%. Jobs that we would consider industry are growing at 5% year over year. Non-industry, 5% as well. The issue here is we've got some outliers that are messing with the average.
That's enough for me to understand. And the reason, Clay, that's super helpful to me is because, and I don't mean to offend anybody in the room or listening, but theoretically, non-industry jobs, we should be least worried about retaining those individuals because they're non-industry. We can slot in somebody else because they're non-industry, they're non-specific. It's not specialized knowledge, right?
Generally speaking, yes, and that's why we care about industry versus non-industry, is technically if you were looking for an IT specialist, that IT specialist doesn't need to be specific to the power industry to be plugged into that job and perform the job well.
Right, but a line crew foreman, I don't know what that is. I'm sorry, a meter technician journeyman absolutely must be specific.
Industry specific.
Yep.
Some with leadership.
755, that helps a ton. Yep.
Now if we can just get
Now we
those
get the
other
counts,
columns.
and we'll
Right.
we'll
All right.
understand.
Well,
Yep.
we appreciate you bringing that back to
Super
us,
helpful.
Clay. We will come back to this, everyone. We've spent an hour and a half on this,
35
and that's okay, but I don't feel like we're ready to make a decision on that. So if you don't mind, Clay, bring that back to us next month, and then we are going to move on to our Squire and Bart Miller on the next agenda item. I'm moving it up because he's waited now this time.
Do you need a motion to continue this on the agenda where
If
it's
you
up for
want.
approval?
If you want.
I'd make a motion that we continue item number 2 to our next meeting. Jason, go ahead.
I'll just say that this has gone to the employees after being with the HR committee. The employees have seen this presentation. I just want the board to know. And that we're finalizing our employee evaluations, and I am basing my decisions on approving those increases to this wage study. Meaning I'm not using what the ranges were in 2024, but in 2025. Just so everybody knows. Because it doesn't have a budget implication. Meaning we're still managing within budget with that 3% merit pool of the total salary.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's no budget implication here, but just know that, you know, the employee base has seen this, they've seen this presentation right after we met with the HR committee. Yeah. And so...
Can I hear you loud and clear.
Mm-hmm.
Can I temper that mentality, which is you're looking out for your employees, I love it, with the reality that you already have a history of trying to deal with industry norms regardless of the midpoint.
Yeah.
So taking another month to talk about a midpoint change?
Oh, no. It doesn't, you know, as far as, I just want the board to know that
that's good to know, because we definitely don't want employees to think that we're not.
Management is managing to these things, and, you know, if the midpoint does shift a little bit or whatever, you've seen the splatter chart, we're still gonna be within range and all of that type of stuff. It's just, I'm managing.
In essence, this doesn't put a hold for you to continue.
Right, no,
as mentioned.
but I just wanted everybody
I'll
to
second
be
the
aware
motion
of
and bring
that.
it back.
Okay.
Personally, I'm ready. I would vote to pass this pay range study as we've looked at it today. I don't know that the questions we're asking Clay to bring back are going to make a difference in this year's salary. It might give us some things to look at and to consider for ongoing,
I think it
but
will.
I don't think it's going to make a difference in this.
I think it will make a difference in this year's salary for at least the ones that have been capped and won't be capped after we pass it. Because immediately those salaries can change.
Didn't you say you'd already adjusted to that?
I made that adjustment
That
within the 3%.
But you weren't able to do it on some people. Some people were capped.
You can change the range and it'll affect next year for sure. But for this year that we're finalizing, you know that has been managed to this salary.
Yeah.
So,
But if we wait a month, you can continue to do what you're doing. Is that?
yes,
Except the ones that are capped.
I'm going as forward according to what was approved in the budget.
In the budget.
Yes.
Kendall, do you want to keep your motion then?
Yeah, if it doesn't affect what Jason needs to do, and I'd be ready to pass the pay study now because I think it maybe affects future, but maybe not so much right now. But
Keep your motion. I'll second that we bring it back next month.
and we just look at additional stuff. If Jason can go ahead and do what he needs to do to keep the company, the doors open.
We're just managing. We're managing within budget. I mean, if you guys decrease these ranges a lot, you're going to have a whole bunch of employees that are above midpoint. If you increase it, then you're going to have some people that are below midpoint. So,
Kevin, do you want to vote on the motion?
Aye.
Yes.
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 All right, that passes 5-0. We will discuss this again next month, and maybe not for an hour and 40 minutes. We'll see how that goes.
We could hope not, right?
All right, now we're going to move you up, Matt, with Squire. We're moving up agenda item number 5, the review and acceptance of the 2024 audited financial statements. So Bart, I'm going to turn this over to you and Matt with Squire. Thank you, Clay.
I'll let Matt take it.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, please go ahead, Matt, and can you share your screen, or do you want us to run the presentation that you've sent us?
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's important to note that we did previously visit with the audit committee and go over the audit of the financial statements previous to this meeting. So I'll go over high level, and then any detailed questions, happy to address those or have Bart help address those. Squire was engaged to perform an audit of the financial statements of Heber Light and Power for the year ended December, sorry, I've got a June report in front of me, December 31st, 2024. Ultimately, our responsibility is to audit the balances and activities and the financial statements of Heber Light and Power and issue an opinion on those financial statements. As you can see on my screen here, ultimately we have issued an unmodified opinion in auditor language or a clean opinion. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Heber Light and Power. What does that mean? What that means is, as a board, as management, as external users utilize the financial statements, they can reasonably rely that the financial statements present the balances and activities of the district, that they're fairly presented. Or said another way, you can utilize them to make key financial decisions for Heber Light and Power. We issue a couple additional reports in addition to the audit of the financial statements. The first additional report we issue is a report in accordance with government auditing standards. Because you're a government, we're required to issue this report. Specifically, we're required to review your internal control over financial reporting and compliance-related matters. And if we identify significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, and I define those frequently as things that should keep management or those charged with governance awake at night. If we identify those items, we would be required to report those in this letter. We have not identified any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in your internal control over financial reporting or compliance. The last report we issue is, because you're a government in the state of Utah, the Office of the Utah State Auditor has an audit guide in which we're required to apply to key compliance areas of Heber Light and Power, as highlighted here. Ultimately, we issue an opinion on compliance that Heber Light and Power complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements outlined in the compliance guide issued by the Office of the Utah State Auditor. Overall, a very good report for the company, both from a compliance and a financial reporting perspective. That was very quick on the reports that we ultimately issued. Any specific questions on our reports and or the financials of Heber Light and Power?
Well, this was just sent out to us today, even though Brenda and I saw it on Monday. Would the board like to take more time to review this, or do you have any questions up front?
No questions.
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Okay. All right. It doesn't seem to have any questions. I asked you on Monday if you had any other concerns, and you said no. Have you changed your mind?
I have not. And to reiterate, I think my response, your people have been very responsive to our questions. Auditors are disrupted. We come in, we ask a lot of questions, we gather a lot of information. Your people have been orderly, have been able to respond quickly to our requests and questions and have the information available to us. So that's really commendable from a board standpoint and from a management standpoint. You guys are doing very well.
So you're saying you've been able to sleep very well since Monday?
I've been able to sleep fine since before then.
Bart, if I could please, Bart, I'm really interested to see how these audited statements match up to our trend sheet for December, right, or January, I should say, of this year.
The trend sheet will be
Can you
adjusted to match that.
Can you update it to the 2024 totals, right? And will you bring that back to us then next month, that we will have the 24 totals match this? And then if you could just make a little note that now they've changed, right, little asterisk, that this has changed to reflect the financial audited statements. I'd appreciate that. Okay, and then let's see.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, that sounds good.
There is one item. If you remember, our debt service number fell below the indenture requirement of 1.25. And so our bond trustee requires that we submit a letter to them that Matt didn't provide here. He provided to me separate. It goes to all the bondholders. And that note is made mention of in there that we did fall below. Our indenture is written in such a way that we can fall below as long as we undertake a couple different steps. One of those steps is to do an immediate rate study and rate adjustment, which you guys did last month. So we are in compliance with the bond indenture, but it was an item deemed notable by MAP, so that will.
Okay, I will make a motion that we accept the 2024 audited financial statements.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Anyone want to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, we'll start with you, Kevin, on the vote.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your patience in waiting for us, Matt. Now that motion is passed 5-0. Good job.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, everyone, if you don't mind, we will go to agenda item number 3 now, approval of a general manager merit increase. I'm not sure if I should step in on this or if someone else wants to discuss the, what it entails.
I think Carly should report what happened into what we decided. I think Carly should do that.
Okay. Carly, feel free.
Just a summary of what was discussed then at the last meeting based on the general manager meeting expectations and his position and range. The board was recommending an increase of 2%.
And then I think it would be good for the public to know when is the last time that any merit increase was given to the general manager, as we discussed.
Didn't receive a merit increase in last year in 2004.
24.
So none in 20, yeah, none in 24. Okay.
He didn't want one this year, but we're making him take it.
Yeah, that should be noted. I would like to make a motion that we approve the general management merit increase of 2%.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right, Kevin, I'll let you go first, please.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Okay, that passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Let's go on now to agenda item number 4. Bart, I am so not looking forward to this discussion on the review and approval of the 2025 insurance renewal.
You should look forward to this one.
Well, it didn't look good.
There's just a lot of information there.
It looked like it was incredibly expensive.
I'm just glad somebody's willing to insure us.
It's incredibly expensive, but it is not too bad. So, who has? Do I need to share?
Yeah, I was gonna have you share, but
I can share.
I can pull it down.
I just figured somebody else was running that. So, Jason is spot on. He's glad that we had somebody willing to insure us because
That was the tough part, wasn't it?
it was. If you go through, you'll see there's a page in the document that has a whole bunch of different insurers that declined to cover.
Yeah.
And one of them was our carrier last year.
Is this page? Oh no, that's the financial security.
Jason, you going? I want to.
Yeah.
I can grab mine real quick. It's right here.
This one.
To give you a little bit of, well, yeah, there's a list of a whole bunch of insurers.
And a lot of them says declined on but one.
Yeah. Last year, and we're only talking liability on that one, by the way. Many of our carriers on our boiler and marine and stuff like that, they stayed. It's just our general liability that we are struggling to find anybody else to insure us. Now that being said, I was at a meeting today where Fitch and S&P both presented together for an hour and a half. It was a really riveting one, almost as good as Gatsby yesterday. But they have both downgraded LADWP because of fire issues, okay? Which is the number one reason why
The California fires is where
we're struggling to get general liability coverage is because of the fire mitigation issues. And so it's not just us. I wouldn't be shocked if in 5 years we can't get liability insurance, we can't get cybersecurity insurance because of
Everything that's
New
going on.
Jersey's on fire today.
Yeah, New Jersey's on fire today, burning pipes. Now let's go to the next page.
Bart, can I counter that with a thought?
Yeah.
Theoretically, market forces being what they are, we should be able to, the further we wait from the fires, the more likely we can get it, but the higher the cost overall, right? Because theoretically there's going to be insurers that come in with this additional risk, bring rates way up, and it brings the market rates way up, and people start to get approved again.
Well, what we're
Right.
seeing is, and you see it in our policy, they're going to give us liability insurance, but they're going to exclude any kind of fire risk. And
So it'll
that-
be a more limited policy.
Yes, and that's what we're looking at this year. So let's keep going down. Sorry.
So they're going to probably charge us more for less coverage? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. We're lucky there. Okay. So these first few pages are just kind of a letter to you guys to say, hey, like right here, it's the financial stability of the insurers. They got a pretty big war chest to cover any claims that we have, right? So let's keep going. The real meat and the potatoes are in these coming pages. So these are the carriers I was saying declined. And you see there's plenty of them, right?
Yeah.
Hartford, HCC, Chubb, and even CNA, they have covered us in the past, and they won't even consider us now.
Right.
If we were part of
I see. Good to see.
of one of your cities, and if they were getting the whole comprehensive whole city insurance, Hartford would carry the electrical. But because we're not part of that, whereas we're electrical,
We're a separate company.
they won't cover us. But if you look,
And you're saying it's just because of the fires last year that they're now saying, no, we won't do it anymore.
yes,
Bart, can I ask a clarifying question to what you just said? They
Yeah.
won't cover us at all. Does declined, unable to offer terms mean? Was there any ask, any upper and lower guidance that we gave them for which the declined, unable to offer terms comes back? What I mean, another way to ask that question is,
Item 5.
are these declines because of something we said as far as what we wanted, or might these be approved but with insane terms, right? So for instance, might ASCOT have been approved but with something that we don't want to even think about accepting, so they're not,
these
Because
no
of the
longer
cost.
provide liability to electric companies.
period. Okay.
Hartford is the only one in this list of declines that does provide on electrical, but only if they bring in the whole
Well, it's
city.
municipality.
Okay?
Got it.
So,
So who does Heber City go with?
I don't know off the top of my head. Well, I know it's a Utah Trust.
we did have 4 insurers that were willing though. And so AIG, Allied World, ASIC, Zurich combo, and a Liberty Zurich combo. Now the biggest headache last year and this year with underwriter discussions was with Liberty Mutual. They take an hour of our time a day. Wasn't too bad.
Aren't
But
they the ones
That's
that
the
want
Liberty Zurich
policies?
down there.
That's just the discussion time, but that's after I probably went through 10 hours of filling out forms and
Right.
responding to things, right? So you'll see that they came in at 797. We were hoping that they would actually provide a pretty good rate, but the best rate came in from Applied. I always forget this acronym. But they're 392. This is the one we're going to recommend we go with. You can see that clearly half as much. AIG and Allied World, they're higher, but the coverages are not very good. They're kind of a pain to work with.
So less for more.
Yeah, so it would be between these two, but because this is the price, this is really kind of what we got to go with.
So why is that? Why is it, your speculation, why is it so low comparison? Why is it?
We have a lot of history with them.
Oh, okay.
So they know what we provide, they know what we do.
Oh, I see.
What's the Zurich part of that? What?
Zurich is actually the bigger underwriter. So
Zurich underwrites both of those.
yeah.
But that seems strange that where they're the head underwriter,
The
that
thing
they'd be
is,
so much different.
I'll take the phone calls from these guys, but ultimately the money will come from these guys. Now, I say that, this is the kicker here.
Yeah.
Okay? In the past, we have been insured at whatever, the $5 million limit, right? And if somebody hits something, we have any kind of, we had a bad cutout on our system, and it tripped off, and somebody's fridge and microwave and dishwasher circuit board's all fried. They call, and I say, well, call this number. And then I get a phone call from the claims adjuster, and he says, you're going to approve this, you're going to deny it. Under this plan, only once it's $100,000 will we talk to insurance. So every claim that gets called in, every fridge, every dishwasher, microwave, the call's going to come to me, or if we choose to hire somebody that processes this stuff, then for about $4,800, I think is what they quoted me, they'll take those phone calls and they'll do what historically has been done. And
Otherwise, till it's 100,000, you have to do it.
yes. And so let's take, for example, the girl who got hit on Main Street, okay? That one, up to that $100,000 limit, they'll still provide us the attorney, and they'll still provide that stuff in the background, but it would be me that's taking that phone call and me that's pushing the wheels to get things moving, okay? So that's how we're able to keep this at 392.
For clarity, it doesn't change the coverage, it changes the workload significantly.
Correct. Yep.
And is the 100 per occurrence, or is that like a total
Per
deductible?
occurrence.
Per occurrence.
It has to reach that 100.
Which you won't hit very often, hopefully.
No.
They're expecting you to take all the workload, but they're still going to cover it
Yes.
when it gets.
And
to the
that's
point
why
of
they're able to
coverage.
hold it down that long.
Except legal. They'll supply legal.
Except legal,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. You're thinking that that's partially why that premium is so different.
Yes.
Now, what about the wildfire exclusion? That's the other big piece.
Yes, that's now forever written in probably.
Okay, Bart,
Going forward with everybody.
how many calls do you get, say, and you turn over to the insurance company for, say, TVs, water, whatever is in the electric, that when we have an outage, it flips back on and ruins them? How many do you have?
Depending on the year, with our tree trimming, we've seen a decrease. This last year, I probably had 5, maybe 6.
Okay.
Okay.
I honestly think, even if I take all those calls, it's less workload. Because I still take the call, but I'm dealing with the adjuster.
Yeah.
And they want a whole bunch of information.
So it might even be easier just to
So you're not
take care of it when
overwhelming.
you get the call and be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, if it gets crazy, I think we go with the $4,800 option, but until I'm feeling like I'm overly swamped, and I'll probably just put Andrew on those phone calls. So, the biggest issue is we're basically self-insuring to $100,000.
Can I ask on the Liberty Zurich, what is that includes WC?
Workers' comp.
Workers' compensation.
So we're getting workers' comp through the
WCF,
trust, the what, the who?
Workers' Compensation Fund.
Yeah, yeah, so that's why we don't need that. That's probably why it's so much more expensive.
Can I clarify what you just said? We're self-insuring to 100,000. So if it settles for under 100,000, they're not covering anything. We're paying
Other
for it.
than attorney.
This is basically your
Does cover the
deductible.
attorney.
But that actually is a little different than what I was hearing slightly earlier. I was hearing workload, but it's actually workload plus significant risk because everybody that's under 100,000 will never even get to an underwriter.
We're not on fire upstairs.
So for what that's worth, board, if something happened and we fried 2,000 fridges, we're paying for every one of them.
The insurances.
No, we are paying.
We are.
100,000.
It's 100,000.
Under 100,000, we get
Oh.
no coverage.
That's not.
We're self-insuring under 100,000, which means the next step of that, if we're self-insuring under 100,000, our financials as a company are wrong because we can't self-insure for under 100,000. The risk there, I'm just throwing this out here, the potential risk of claims under 100 with the number of customers we have is way more than cash reserves or anything that we have. I don't think that's an option.
As a technical expert on the distribution system, we have mechanisms to, I think something that would cause something like that would be like a voltage going too high, right? And it doesn't, those are very rare because of the...
But the burden of proof would be on us.
Oh.
The burden of proof would be on us. We have legal representation, but assuming we miss the burden of proof, we are paying for it. Adam, yes.
Yeah, and we're talking about $100,000 in aggregate right now per
No,
occurrence.
total.
No, each one.
Per
Each,
occurrence.
per occurrence.
Okay. Fine.
If it was an aggregate, that'd be fine.
Yeah,
We could model that. But if it's per occurrence, that's impossible to model.
That's
Because it could be 99,000, hypothetical. It can't really be, but it could be 99,000 per client, per customer. Which that one seems super scary to me.
Like in my whole career, I have only seen once, like a transformer was bad and we damaged something. I don't think it...
But
It could be electric vehicles, though. That's wildly new. We have $100,000 electric vehicles, and maybe it's harder to prove that we didn't damage an electric vehicle. I'm just throwing out here. That one gets stuck to me.
You also have to weigh in the cause of the outage.
Sure.
Okay.
If it's natural.
99% of our outages. I told you last year I think I had 5. The worst year I had was 10 phone calls. I think we've only. If we pay one a year, I'd be shocked. The last 11 years, probably one every other year.
For how much?
The most was 6,200, 6,300, somewhere in that range.
Whatever fridge is.
There's probably been as many that we've paid through insurance as got denied by insurance. The customer came and seen the board, and the board paid for their fridge and TV and anything anyways, because the board took pity on them. So, that's happened too, where insurance has denied the claim and the customer has asked to come and see the board about it.
So, something to think about. Maybe I'm wrong with how people work, but I would guess that when you hand them off to, I don't know, Allied World, there might be customers that say, "Screw it, I don't have time to deal with this," and they stop biting.
Oh no.
But if they're talking to Heber Light and Power, I would guess they would be more likely to show up at the door over and over until it gets paid.
I've actually found the opposite. The ones that we're just like, we'll just take care of this, we'll work with, they are just quiet, they want less. But the ones that we had a guy a couple of years ago, his equipment, A, it was not our fault, and B, it was so old and ancient that the insurance wasn't even offering him hardly anything on it. He fought that to the end. I mean, it was terrible. The other thing this does is years ago we took the house down. We didn't. The homeowner did. It allows us to say we're not settling that. Because we would have probably prevailed in court on that one. If we'd have lost in court, they'll cover. And so it does give us a lot more flexibility we haven't had in the past. Last week, Charleston was out 2 times or 3 times?
2 times.
And what were those outages caused by?
Birds.
Birds. It's nesting season, right?
Yeah.
I haven't had any phone calls yet. They're usually about a week out. So
Of course, somebody will call you and say that blew my fridge or my TV.
either
or
a fridge or clothes washer typically, the circuit board's on there. So that's an easy one. I'll just be like, sorry, customer service rule blank blank says that we do not cover or guarantee coverage when a bird drops a stick that they're trying to build their nest with.
Yeah.
So, like I said, although there is a huge risk if something crazy happened, I have to agree with Patricio that our system's much more complex and intelligent to
Prevent that from happening.
one, it prevents it from happening, and two, the only thing that's going to cause it to happen is if some excavator really hoses us, and then guess whose insurance is paying for it?
Yes.
You know, and so it's, although it appears risky on the level, and there's always risk, but there's risk of me standing here right now. I mean, I could pop it in a hamstring or something, you know. It's low.
Well,
It looks scary.
Devil's advocate, though. Our funding is this company is not big enough that if the worst case happened and there were enough just under 100,000, that it wouldn't be the end of the company completely, right? I mean, it wouldn't take much. I'm saying I understand it's unlikely, but if we don't have anything until 100 grand, there's enough 75s. It's not that many to shut the entire company down permanently. Completely.
I think,
and it's probably like a government
in that
step
case,
at that point,
we'd
but like,
probably go the legal route and get a governmental and community injunction in the situation.
And I guess the bottom line is we have no other choice anyway.
well, we do. We have one that doesn't have that. We pay $797 instead,
Yeah.
right?
But we don't.
Because at $797, we don't have this 100 grand
We
retention problem.
But we don't need the
completely
workman.
change our workers' compensation coverage. Though.
Yeah.
But can't we get a quote without the workers'
No.
comp?
What about-
They want it together.
It's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing.
And like, for the technical aspect of it, like when there is an outage, devices should not get damaged. The only reason that something get damaged is that the transformer, the distribution transformer, is giving them way high voltage.
Right.
But like an outage as such should not damage anybody's equipment. So that's.
I remember Jason telling me, and Jason, I'm not quoting you in a bad way. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to remember the way you said it. I remember him saying something to the effect of, if somebody's equipment, I'm a computer guy, right? So if somebody's equipment gets damaged from an outage, they must have had pretty poor equipment. Because there's a couple of parts that could have gone bad. However, I see people call me and say, when the power went out last week, the computer never came back on. To which I am saying, well, that power supply in that computer looks okay to me. Like, it's not a garbage power supply. So I can't really tell you what happened. I know what I need to fix. I can't tell you what happened. I know that I don't have them call Heber Power anymore. It's not a problem. It's not a conflict of interest. I'm just telling them, you're not going to get anywhere if you call Heber Power, because the reality is, this is your computer and nothing else in the house happens. So it's hard to prove this. But something does happen sometimes with our systems to damage things. I'm telling you right now, because I see it. I don't know what it is, but it does happen. I don't know what that
lightning too.
I don't know what that means for
lightning
electric
hits the system
vehicles.
and induces a transit into the system, and there's nothing we can do.
There's nothing you can do.
If you don't have that protection in your house, it's going to burn up. It can burn up.
And I think
everything in your house.
most houses don't, right?
And that's
That kind of a surge or something like that. So it's just something I'm throwing out here to say, there's a chance, especially as people are plugging in more things that are more expensive, EVs especially is what I'm thinking of, that we actually have more people complaining about very high value things, because we've never had that, but we will have a lot more of that in the next 5
EV,
years.
it take its all out anyway.
If you have a $80,000 Tesla and something goes wrong with the battery and you're looking at a $20,000 battery replacement, I don't think those people stay quiet.
No, they don't. So can you just?
I agree that there's risk here. I think that there's a clear dissemination, though, that we have very good data to the meter, and we are not responsible for anything behind the meter. And so we can prove, you know, that the voltage was at 120 at the meter, and it was 60 hertz at the meter, and then there was a blip, and it went to 0, and then it came back to 120 and 60 in our AMI system. What we don't have control of is what's behind the meter. And so if that Tesla inverter kicks on and the two AC units kick on all at the same time, when that power comes back on and there's a drop in frequency behind the meter, then yeah, there can be damage in that home. But that is not our job to regulate what is plugged in behind that meter. And so as long as we've got data to prove that at that location with that outage, and that's why all these claims get denied, is we share that data, and there's no reason we can't deny that claim. You know, because we've got the data to prove it. Now, if we lose a neutral, which has happened in a transformer, because, you know, one of our employees didn't tighten that neutral lug enough, and, you know, we fried the 4 houses, and there's multiple equipment damaged, yeah, that claim has been paid, and that claim has been as high as like $10,000-$12,000.
Because it would show to each of those meters
but
that it was our error.
the meters show that we lost that neutral and the voltage spiked.
Gotcha.
And so, I mean, I think if we didn't have AMI and we didn't have the data to like literally show this was not our issue, this is on the customer side of the meter and they need to control their own loads, you know. You know, our guys can tell you, we've gone into these houses after that and, you know, they've got a 100 amp service with, you know, things plugged into every socket, and, you know, they're clearly exceeding the value of that circuit and everything else. We've even seen them running them to the neighbor's trailer, you know, and trying to claim us for ruining their equipment. But, you know, we just got the data to prove that, no, that's not the case, you know.
So that's our insurance right there.
That, I guess that's, you know, we've made some serious investments, and with insurance costs going the way they're going, you know, if you don't want insurance to just continually like just increase exponentially at 30%, then the company has got to take on some more risk. And that goes even back to our rate discussion and getting our reserves right. Yeah. That's a part of managing that risk, is to, you know, have the reserves necessary to be able to handle some of this risk. And instead of paying an insurance company year over year these rates that just keep increasing at exorbitant rates, then the only way to decrease that is to up premiums, or to up, you know, to up the check we're going to write when something fails, or start taking some equipment off of the list that we're insuring. And in my view, this is an option that insurance companies are offering now. That, yeah, we absorb a little bit of risk, but we're saving a bunch of money.
Do we have a mechanism to take what we're saving and put it into a savings account and build up a reserve over time?
We've done that in the past.
Yeah.
You mean the difference between the 392 and the 797?
Whatever it is we're saving to take on that risk, can we put it somewhere and let it grow and be ready in case something catastrophic does happen that we can't prove for whatever reason? The AMI system fails us.
The last time that there was a delta, there was enough of that, and Bart and I informed the board that the reason that there was a shift is because we removed some equipment that we're insuring, and we are going to self-insure it if you take that number. Then we took that savings and put it into, we took that delta and put it into a bank account to just hold on to in the case that there was something.
So that equipment we didn't insure.
But are we doing that right now? Are we self-insuring some equipment?
The account's still there, but that was a one-time thing when a board told us when they approved the insurance policy to put that money into an account.
Okay, but are we still self-insuring anything after that?
We've got 3 or 4 large transformers that
We're self-insured.
we're self-insuring because they're so old
Yeah.
that to pay a premium on them and then get $50,000, it's not worth it. $350,000 piece of equipment. to get-
But we're not actively putting money into that account every year any longer.
There's not been a delta.
There's not been that
I was
delta.
gonna say, should we, yeah, we should look at
If
the
that
cost of
mechanism
those
exists,
three
that would
we're
make me feel more
self-insuring.
comfortable.
Go on the next page.
Do we have in our budget
Bart?
a line
Bart?
item, not just for the insurance, but for
Just a second.
out of pocket?
I would like to
dedu-
understand.
to cover
For the
deductibles?
deductibles.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't have a specific
We haven't been doing that
deductible
today.
in the budget, no.
Well,
So-
I would like to understand what equipment we are self-insuring at this point and what replacement costs are, because we haven't restricted anything other than kayak in our reserves. And if we need to have some other type of restricted fund for self-insurance, I think that's a wise thing.
Well, the things that aren't insured are
Yeah, this is important.
the transformers.
Yeah.
Everything else is on that schedule and covered. But like I say, the deductible, like if this building had an issue, okay, this building is insured, but we have a $50,000 deductible on it. Years ago, that was a lot less. We just continued to move things up. We've got our generators and stuff are at $100,000 for the deductible. We've got like $158,000 in that PTIF account for self-insurance. So it'll cover any one of these deductibles or the majority cost of one of those transformer replacements. Now, any transformer that's less than 10, 15 years old is on this list as being insured. Because, I mean, the Southville big transformer, $2.5 million transformer 5 years ago, probably close to 3.5 now. So that one is completely covered, but it's new enough that they will give us replacement value for it. But when you take a transformer that's 40 years old, replacement value on that thing, they're digging in the smallest of barrels in the most remote of locations.
$3.50, huh?
So that's really what it is. Like I say, we have it set aside to cover these deductibles or the lion's share of the cost of the Atlantic transformer on order.
Okay.
With that in
Figure out
mind,
what we're
Board,
gonna
I'd say if we go with the ASIC Zurich, just throw this out here. If we go with that and there's some savings versus what we were expecting or versus what the industry cost is now, we should definitely put some of that into some self-insurance fund. Just because, to your point, if these deductibles are going up, I zoned right in on cyber liability. We don't have any extra risk, it's just what I zoned in on. For the fund transfer fraud, I know people locally that have had this happen recently. The deductible is $25,000, which means we're just paying it every time. Because if it wasn't $25,000, every single time that happens, if it happens, we're just paying it. So I'd like to have more in that self-insurance fund because it's probably not just the transformer.
That's what
We need
I'm
to think
sure.
about that fund differently going forward, which is, it's just a good thing to know next time we do, whether it's rate, wherever we talk about that
So-
rate or budget.
Just to have a sense of the magnitude, what was our premium last year?
This should be on the next set of pages. These are the new premiums, so we were looking at 392,102. So keep going. This is if we want excess liability. So
This is 25, 26.
The 58,000 is for excess liability.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the Liberty Mutual one. All right.
I'm looking for the,
There's the 2020.
Keep going. This is our exposures. No.
where's the one for the one we're doing?
Usually they give us a sheet that has last year's premium versus this year's premium.
I didn't see
I
it.
think it's down
I thought it was in there.
75.
Page 75 of the thing.
Oh, wait a minute, that's exposure summary, sorry. Property schedule,
I don't remember seeing
generator
one.
schedule, transfer.
I don't think they did it this time, so let me, I'll just
Must
pull
be that
up
shocking.
last year's cost.
Well, that cost you got the 797, which that's not the one we're going with.
No.
So where's the breakdown for the one we're going with?
I really think we
The
should
one you
strike
just
the
showed.
driver's
That was the
schedule
three.
from the agenda information, Riley. This driver's schedule.
So last
is new
year, our
license.
premium was 382,
I
112.
think it's
382, 112.
Yeah.
So very similar.
Yeah. page
So
eight.
this
It's
and
only gone
last
up
year's
10,000.
33.
But we had
Should be
more
taken out of the
coverage.
agenda materials
Yeah, we had the
Wildfire.
and page
we
84
had
looks like
wildfire
too.
and we had the general liability.
Yeah,
Well, no, not
Every
84, just
claim,
83.
not-
right.
We didn't have that $100,000 retention piece.
Yeah.
Just
So it really hasn't gone up.
It's
Well,
got,
yeah.
some private
15 grand.
information on there that I don't think should be shared.
Last year to this year. So, that being said, we can budget in and move money over into that PTIF
Well,
account.
you just said we had 185 some.
158.
Okay, that to me doesn't cover near enough of our deductibles. And I really get worried because we're in a more volatile, riskier world given all kinds of issues. So I just can't see how we need to do what Aaron is suggesting and increase it.
Bart, what
10 grand.
just real rough numbers, ballpark. Worst year with insurance, understanding that it covered more, left smaller deductibles. But take a worst year for Heber Light and Power and apply this, if it can be, just off the top of the head, and apply this new policy. How much would we come out of pocket? Worst year.
Oh, I can't even remember paying a deductible
We haven't. Since I've been
since I've been here.
outside.
And what was the
I
deductible
mean, prior to
before?
me being GM, I think we paid a couple of deductibles with previous CFO and previous management. They decided to pay the deductible, but I can tell you on a transformer failure that, Bart and Jake and I were a part of several years ago, we looked at the deductible and what they would ultimately pay, and they would pay us less than the deductible if we paid the deductible because the transformer was aged enough. So we ended up just self-insuring that anyway, because I think our deductible was around 50K, and they were offering 50K, but all the hassle and,
So it was-
actually making a claim and everything, we figured that the risk was less to just go ahead and not pay the deductible and insure it ourselves.
So I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but just if I was to summarize, we haven't had a year where we've had to come out of pocket 100 grand.
No.
On claims or deductibles?
Yes.
No.
Claims, deductibles, all
They should go
told.
down about 10 pages.
What page you on?
Well,
You're looking at the separate deal probably.
So, yeah, just
I'm asking. I didn't ask it correctly. I'm asking from the perspective of if we had this new policy.
this is our worst.
That's our worst right there.
So in 2023, we had 11 claims, about $75,000.
And our deductible was what?
These are just our liability claims that they just cover. Now we would be, if we switched over, our worst year since 2018, that
70 grand.
risk is $78,000.
78,000.
It's
Last
just-
year,
it's been
no
a
claims.
trend. It's a bad trend, I'm just saying, you got a bad trend going on there.
Yeah, that was, I think this was all those bad cutouts we had, if I remember right. So,
It was that open neutral. It was that open neutral in 2023 that ended up being,
Fried some stuff.
fried a bunch of stuff on the west side of town, or on the east side of town, Old Town.
So just to make sure on that one in 2023, so 78,000. And had that been this policy that you're talking about now, it still would have been 78,000. Okay.
that's the total paid out by Zurich. Or Hartford, it was Hartford.
It's Hartford.
On our behalf.
Well, I'm also asking, and self-insured, things that you didn't file a claim or didn't hit, because you didn't hit a deductible.
Well, and see, and that's one of those that, is it maintenance or is it insurable claim? What do you want to call it? I mean, there have been, I mean, our engines have been crapping out on us a lot lately. In theory, we could be submitting some of those charges. The last one we're submitting it on warranty. So I mean, it's one of those things where there is a cost of doing business, there is a cost of maintenance. And so sometimes we just absorb it. We build that, we budget the maintenance with zero intention of ever submitting. We only carry the insurance in the event we absolutely have a drastic situation.
Catastrophic failure.
I mean, it seems, if what's being suggested, I mean, hypothetically, if you set aside
150 that we have.
150, 100, whatever, you know, set aside an amount. It's not like you need to set it as an additional amount every single year, unless you're having one of those years every year or something.
But we might want to think about that 150 being 400 total, given the fact that there might be some calculation of, it's probably a risk calculator, but like, what would happen if the most common deductibles all came due in the same time? What do we want that number to be? And if it's 400, just throw that out there. Let's build to that over 2 years or 3 years or whatever that is. Let's have that discussion. So if we're taking on more self-assessment.
Agreed. Whatever the number is, let's set that aside.
Let's work toward if we're self-insuring, let's actually do that.
Build to it. Once you have it,
stop.
And if you spend some, then you only have to pay back that certain amount. And so, yeah.
Well, this also depends on our risk aversion.
Understand.
And I have a very different risk aversion than perhaps some of you. There you go. So anyway, everyone.
No, I'm horrible with that.
We've spent quite some time in this meeting, and I'm not trying to hurry you along, but I am trying to hurry you along. Okay. So, is anyone ready to make a motion, or Bart, is there any other thing you want to, present on this?
No, like say, the only option is whether you want that excess liability. So
that's another 50-some thousand.
That's another 58,000.
I'm ready for it because I'm very risk averse.
Yeah, Board, I would make the motion that we, given the options we have, that we accept the premium and understanding from ASIC Zurich for the 392, that we opt for the additional liability coverage at 58,000 for the year. And although it's not the decision we're making today, that we also commit to revisiting what that self-insurance bank account looks like in the future.
That's fine. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Sid. Any further discussion?
Yeah, so, so that 150, we have it.
Yeah.
So where's that money gonna come from to put in that fund? And that's something that you guys maybe can think about and
We would
understand.
have to budget it.
I think we can bring it back to discussion for.
Yeah, and that's what I want, to understand where that's coming from and what impacts that is gonna be on. So, that's all I had, sorry.
My question, I'm sorry, I know we probably should on there. What is the additional liability insurance coverage for the 50?
10 million. So that'd take us up to general liability of 15 million.
Man.
10 million for 60 grand.
When does the new building come on? Is it on this policy?
We don't need to keep that in the future either.
It's currently covered under
I think
builder's
this year.
risk. And then when we're ready to move in, then I will notify Olympus, who will then go reach out to Zurich, and they'll give us a prorated premium. I'm assuming it's probably gonna be
Drop this one off and put that one on.
So, but yeah, we get.
So this will change then.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the?
But it does have sprinklers. Come on, it's going to be new construction. It should be low risk.
It will be. It's just a $20 million building.
Yeah, that's.
And when you insure based upon total value. So, but yeah, this would be additional coverage.
What was our liability prior?
The 5.
The 5?
They've been
being
pushing it for
sarcastic.
years to go with excess life.
How did we get to be so expensive?
Okay, are we
So
ready?
it's an additional 10 or brings it to 10?
It brings it to 10.
So it's for five, for
58,000 for $5 million.
an addition, actually an additional 5.
Oh, so it's not 15.
No, we won't make it.
That's
just
pretty-
an
It takes the aggregate to 10 and it takes the occurrence to 10, right?
Okay,
That's pretty steep.
I know.
okay. Are we ready to vote?
It's a
If anybody disagrees with that, I won't be offended if you want to make a different motion to skip that. I just think it's a good idea. But I'm
That's-
not
look at it.
tied into it, so.
Kevin, are you ready to
Nowhere near
vote
that.
yet? No? You can certainly ask more questions. I'm just wondering if
And
you're ready to
Kevin, I know
vote.
you were talking, Kevin, but I said if you want to make a new motion without that 58, I'm not specifically tied to it. I just am pretty risk averse. That's just how I work.
What is your recommendation on this
Well, this is what.
We've never done it before.
for the additional
For
item?
the additional, but I understand if the board would like to.
That was non-committal, but go ahead.
We just, we don't do a lot of claims, and like Bart says, we budget the best we can to, repair and fix stuff that, maybe, might exceed the deductible by a little bit, but, every time you make these claims, it's compounding as to, how much more your premiums go up, so. You might have some breakdown and it costs $65,000 to repair, and you could have paid a deductible of $50,000. Your net's $15,000, and what's that going to do to the next year with these?
With the claim on it.
With the claim on it, And the way it is now, it's super scary on whether you're not even going to get a carrier to carry you. I think these insurance companies are going through really hard times.
Mhm.
So.
Then I would advise you put the 58,000 in that
They're in the stock market.
self-insurance account.
Self-insurance.
That's
And start
That's what I
building
think.
your excess liability that way.
So how do we make the new motion? Did we have a second on your motion?
Yes,
Retract it if you want.
Sid had,
Well, first of all, you've got to vote on that motion, and then you can make a new motion.
Well, if he
I can-
retracts
I
it,
can
you
retract
know.
my
if he
motion.
wants,
Or
if
if he
there's a
wants to
substitute
retract it.
motion and he retracts, that's fine.
I was not that tied into it. I'll retract it. And if somebody wants to make a new motion, I just thought it was a good idea. But I'm not, y'all aren't going to offend me in any
I like the idea better, like you said, to put it into that
Sure.
self-insured
I'll-
fund.
If everyone's fine, I'll make a motion that we accept the proposed liability.
300 and...
392.
It is ACISC.
Yeah, for
and
392,102 from the ASIC Zurich, and that we do not at this time increase the liability, but rather, I guess we can agree at a separate time, the board, to set aside X amount each year to build up to an amount of Y for
Mhm.
self-insurance.
Thank you, I've got that down.
But
now.
that can be done at a
I'll
separate.
second the motion.
All right, thank you, Kendall. All right, are you ready to vote, Kevin?
Yes.
Thank you. I hope
Yes.
you say
Aye.
yes, too.
Yes.
Thank you, yes.
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 Okay, thank you. That passes 6-0. Emily, can you give us the synopsis, the executive high-level
Absolutely.
version of the wholesale power report, please?
Absolutely, we're just
We're not gonna
slightly
leave, you're not-
at or over budget on power purchases. The final March bill isn't out yet, so I can't tell you for certain. Natural gas is under budget significantly, so we purchased more power because it was reasonable than we generated in first quarter of 2025. And we are 5% growth for first quarter 2025 in system load. That's 3% above what I had projected. So overall, our energy costs per kilowatt hour are lower than we had projected. So we're in pretty good shape. And I'm continuing to update my load forecast for the integrated resource plan. And I pushed the public input portion of that till we get to the Public Power Week kind of time frame in October. So that'll work with that. So That is my summary.
That's great. That's great.
And that
Thank
goes
you.
into effect on April 1st? The
Um,
new rate?
It's already, yeah, it's already in effect.
Already in
On the
effect?
ballot.
The new rate is in
Yes,
effect,
for this
yes.
one. Okay.
Okay, appreciate that.
I thought the
very,
stuff
very
you
much.
put out to help the public was great.
Mhm.
Oh, good.
Okay, Jason, we're going to turn it over to you, and please feel free to give us your executive version on this, on the updated capital plan, and then proceed to your GM report, please.
Okay, well, I just wanted to quickly go over the capital plan. You know, this is what was included in your board packet. We are working to get a finalized version of the new capital plan completed by staff, you know, updating the costs on a per project by per project basis.
We're just waiting on Patricio.
We're not. We're not.
But, you know, it's just, I guess it's important to note that there's, you know, several things here that are big ticket items. You know, one is the Plant 1 replacement that's hanging out there as a project estimate right now of $20 million. I can tell you that I have a level 3 estimate on that project from the OEM provider at $31 million. So, you know, we're talking scary numbers on that project that I think needs to come back to the board for further discussion. You know, there's a couple other ones out there. This southern substation, that's the one to the south that we have property for. I can tell you right now we have had, you know, staff has had meetings with Staker Parsons, and they have bought that Daniel Canyon pit and want to do a 3-phase line extension up to that pit. That could ultimately be a very large pit that could end up using quite a bit of energy. If they go through with that line extension, that gets us to the mouth of Daniels Canyon on our service territory with 3-phase. There have been a lot of customers that own property up Daniels Canyon that maybe the holdup has been the cost of that electric line extension up that area. So it's just something to consider when we're considering that $15 million capital plan of getting that substation built out. You know, that's another big ticket item of $15 million. But
would that enhance the development, what you're saying, of perhaps Independence?
It, you know, the backside of Independence,
the southern piece of
that
it.
southern piece, and then any I just don't know what their plans change so frequently. It's
Yes,
just hard
they
to
have
know.
a plan.
But yeah, that could definitely be something that triggers that and moves that, you know, up in the capital plan. You know, those are the two highlights. You know, the rest of the capital plan, we're running down harder, more up-to-date numbers on some of these other items that are especially in the 100% impact fee type column. So that, you know, we've got, you know, good up-to-date numbers, and we'll do our best to grow those numbers with, you know, reasonable inflationary principles throughout the 6-year capital plan, so that we've got, you know, good valid numbers with going into the impact fee study. And I can tell you that staff is working very hard on getting all those numbers updated and to a point where we can submit. So
So, Jason,
Yes.
a couple of questions, or at least I need to tell the board. I've asked Bart on this capital plan to put these little symbols right before the project, and he'll continue to put those in, but it's the funding sources for these various projects, and he'll complete it. It's not quite complete yet.
No, we're
But
still working on it.
You can see whether it's impact fee eligible, whether it's from the 23 bond, whether it's from a future bond, or whether it's coming out of our rates. If there's nothing there, and Bart, I don't think you can use nothing, you know what I mean? I think each one of them need a little symbol, because otherwise I'm saying, well, is it just our rates, or is it maybe you missed that line? I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm picky that way. The other thing that I'm going to ask you, Jason, is not call it Southern Substation, because it makes me think of Southfield Park. Could you call it Daniel Substation? Would
Sure.
that be okay?
Yeah, I'll name it whatever.
I'm just saying, I don't want anybody to be confused on that. We've got a bunch of South going on.
The reason we didn't do Daniel is because in the Southfield substation, Rocky Mountain Power named their side of that sub Daniel sub.
Did they?
Yes. So,
Well, let's think of another name.
we can call it Canyon Substation
Yeah,
or something like that.
Daniel Canyon. How about that? Daniel Canyon Substation. That would be
That
great,
works.
because otherwise I'll probably mix it up.
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay.
The other thing that I'm really interested in is if we did an internal generation plant, we can buy a lot of natural gas off the market for 30 plus million. You see what I mean? What's going to be the return on investment for some of these projects like that? Now, the building doesn't so much have, our new building, there's really not a return on investment there other than other efficiencies. So I would really like you and your staff to think about, for these big capital facilities projects, how many more kilowatts are we going to generate and sell based on them? You see what I mean? Is it worth the money given how much we can recoup in revenue? That's the return on investment I would like us to do. And you don't have to do them for all of them right now, but at least for the ones that are being considered for the 2026 bond. Okay, and then there's a kind of a secondary analysis that I'm interested in, because it's not just return on investment. We need other efficiencies for other projects or other needs in the business, and you can bring in a cost-benefit analysis to address those other things, not just a return on investment for these big 2026 ticket items. Is that possible to do? Those two types of analysis for the 2026 bond projects?
Yeah, as far as, the plant one replacement, I don't mind doing that, but it'd be on historical, and like I say, I think staff, has kind of decided on what to do there, but that needs to come to the board. I mean, right now, that's a proposal for a six bay garage with 3 bays being designated as research and development bays. But the payoff on the research and development bays, we can easily do that cost benefit analysis, because we've got great historical numbers on the research and development program. The other 3 right now are just for future installations if needed, and that's what I mean. I mean, that could be shrunk down to 5 bays or 3 bays, and get the square footage of the building down to just the point where all that is just 3 research and development bays, and that's all it is.
See, I'm more interested in battery technology, because we can.
Yeah, that's why I
we
need
can charge the
executive
battery
session.
at night. Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot less expensive to me on battery technology than building, the 30 million plus of the generation. That's all I'm saying. At least I think it would be. But I want to see that cost benefit analysis and help us really understand, what are we giving up? What are we getting in return? What's the best bang for our buck?
Okay, you're making notes of that.
Thank you, Emily. Oh darn, Emily's going to be doing all this. Thank you, Emily. Okay.
Well, no, she's going to be doing a lot of it.
It'd be reminding you what you got to do.
Did you take notes of that?
Okay, and Bart. Okay.
Patricio,
I'm
don't tell.
hiding behind the mayor.
You know, we're
Listen to the
just so
recording.
slammed right now, right, with so many projects. And I just hope that this will help us to be wiser with where we're deciding to grow, right,
So,
and
are you s-
responding to growth.
You're saying that we'll discuss this further at a different time, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I already have some thoughts, but I don't think this is the right one. We'll do it later.
Well, I'm not sure how long your thoughts will take.
No, I'm just saying like a battery versus a generator, so it's no apples to apples, just because the generator gives us the flexibility of being a peaking facility,
Right.
right? And
This is
also-
that cost-benefit part.
Okay, and the reliability of it, so the battery, so far they haven't shown to be very reliable, so.
I did not know that.
The battery side.
It's the latest, greatest, and everyone said it's so good, because it's, you know.
It's
let
not
us store
panning
that
out.
1 megawatt, and if it's not happening, are we
Just-
going to discuss
I
this?
gotta go into executive
Okay.
session to let the board.
Okay.
So let's move it to executive session.
Okay. Thank you.
Does he need to do more on the GM report, or you done that?
No, he hasn't done the GM.
I know he hasn't, but,
Kendall wants to.
no, I'm,
I can go quickly through the GM report until
Oh.
I get to the building update, but.
I had just one. I know we've talked about this before. I just want to kind of reiterate, I guess, since we're on this updated capital plan, of the concept of. Let me back up. When we increased the rates and had to do the substantial 13% for a number of reasons, and I know hindsight is 20/20, but it would have been nice at that same time to have fully updated our impact fee study and analysis with the capital improvement plan, so that we can, demonstrate to the constituents that we're maximizing that. And because we put that behind, we can't include those. We could have maybe had a slightly less than 13. We don't know, right?
It's just to that comment, I need the board to really keep in mind the capital plan is a double-edged sword. As soon as we get a capital plan that we use for an impact fee study, then that's the capital plan that gets used for the rate study. And so, the debt requirement to fund that capital plan is pulled out of that for the rate study. So when that consultant looks at what you need to fund your capital program, he's looking at what you're going to bring in for impact fees and what you need to meet that, to fill that nut for your overall capital plan. So if I was to update the capital plan prior to the rate study from the one that was used in the last impact fee study, then I am increasing the need of revenue within the rate plan to fund the capital program. Where the board has the discretion in that rate study is the impact fee value that he is using as far as bringing in to contribute to that capital plan. So he used $3 million in the rate study, and that's where the board has to look and make sure that the crystal ball is correct. And, should that be $4.5 million? Should that be $5 million to be used? And that will decrease the need of the amount of debt. But I can't work them both at the same time. I've got to use the same impact fee study, or I got to use the same capital plan that I used on the last impact fee study for the next rate plan. I can't all of a sudden, we're doing rates, so I'm going to shrink the capital plan so I have less need for capital. and then show a capital plan and an impact fee study that shows what our actual capital need is. Does that make sense?
Sure. And please correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there a differentiation also though between, say, capital improvements that are projected, into the future versus capital improvements that we have in place that haven't been put into the impact fee rate study?
I guess, are you talking about, like, say Southfield Sub?
Say Southfield, yep.
So
exactly.
that has been capitalized and, is not a project anymore, but it still qualifies for the impact fees.
Those, I think you're hitting the nail on the head.
Yes.
Those are the line items that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if we could take all of those that meet that criteria, right, that doesn't increase the capital improvement plan for the rate study, but can increase the amount of impact fees that are charged per unit because of...
The difference is because we've capitalized that and we've got a true up, then we true up what the actual cost is. So, and that works both ways. But we've capitalized it. We know what the cost of that substation was, 21 million or whatever.
Right.
But now, Bart shows that as a completed project within the capital plan on a hidden tab, but that's still values that we can collect impact fees for besides the 6 years that we're studying. It's just not being studied any longer. We can only study this year forward 6 for the collection of new impact fees. But those projects still qualify as impact fee related, and so you're still able to collect for those projects at that newer rate, but they're not included in the study.
They're not
And that's by statute.
They're not included in the updated impact fee study, or
the costs of them are not included in the impact fee study. The statute only allows us to go for 6 years, but they were impact fee eligible. The true ups are made on those completed projects, and if we haven't collected up to that amount, then we're collecting for those projects at the newer rate. So there's still this huge amount that we can collect for.
Yeah, to put it in the impact fee terminology, that's what Jason's saying is, instead of looking at the cost of our capital plan cost of this project, like what it takes to go build it this year, the impact fees are then collected based on buy-ins to what the excess capacity we create. So we build a substation that will handle 100 megawatts, and we're at 60 at some point in the future. Future impact fees still can be put, essentially put toward paying for that.
Right.
Really what we're doing with those impact fees is buying capacity from ourselves that we already created, rather than going out and building an incrementally larger substation.
So you're saying, I'm gonna dumb it down. You're basically saying for the capital improvements that we spent, like on the substation, right, that weren't included because of increased costs in the initial impact fee study, cannot go into the new impact fee study to increase those rates.
No. That's not the way the statute works.
Because they're already in an impact, and we get...
No, but there's two parts. There's, I'm going to make the numbers easier. I know these aren't it, right? You projected in the initial study it was going to be 10 million, but it cost 15. So 5 million was not in the initial study. You're saying you can't put that 5 into a new study?
That's like with the building cost overruns.
Yeah.
We put it in for a certain amount, and the 40-some-odd% impact fee eligible, but its cost overruns a couple of million.
I'm hearing two different things here then.
Well, I'm just saying, it sounds like we can't recoup those costs, but it's not finished yet, so it could be put into the study.
But in a way, by the statute, and by doing the impact fee studies regularly, what you're doing is when that substation started and it was brought into the 6-year impact fee study, impact fees were $10. I'm just going on numbers.
Sure.
Okay, you do impact fee studies throughout, and impact fee studies get to $20, but you haven't collected even close to the amount of the impact fee eligible dollars.
Right.
We do a new study, that project is still impact fee eligible, okay? But your impact fees may be $20 now, it's just been outside, and now you're collecting on that project at $20 rather than at $10 when you started. So there is a clawback on those projects if you look at the statute over time.
Is it just a 1-year clawback as far as?
No, because it's an impact fee eligible project, and it was studied as such.
Mm-hmm.
And so to make bond payments and all of that type of stuff on that project, you can use impact fees for those payments because it was 100% impact fee.
And that I understand. It's is there no way to recoup basically cost overruns that weren't included?
That's why we keep our impact fee studies so fresh.
Yes, you've got to keep that impact fee study fresh.
And we do it, what, every other year?
No, we
every year.
We've been doing it every year.
Which is, I mean, in some ways, I'd say in the before times, if you did it every 4 years, you were ahead of the curve. As far as keeping your impact fees fresh, the world looks different in the last 5 years in a lot of ways. But still, we're very aggressive with updating impact fee studies so we capture those costs. And the other thing to think about is the impact fee calculations are a very rough estimate. Like the way the impact fee process works is we take all these inputs, our expected growth, our anticipated capital needs, put them into Mark Beauchamp's mystery box, and we get a number that spits out as basically an impact fee per KVA at its core.
So you can't charge...
Those are not necessarily related to a given project or a given part of a project. That's what we get to collect for impact fees, and what we collect we get to spend on the projects that we've listed as impact fee eligible. So it's not nearly as clean as most people would like.
The other part of the statute that you've got to keep in mind is we can't charge impact fees for excess capacity. So you build a project like Southfield, and you build it for the future, but there's only a certain percentage of that additional capacity that you can actually claim as impact fee eligible. So, you're constantly paying that balance too, because the statute's pretty clear that you just can't gold plate your system and make it so that it's good for 200 megawatts when you're never going to get above 50. So, so there's that as well that can be challenged by the developers on the impact fee side of it. So, but yeah, there's always that clawback going on, but it's the increase in impact fees. So, and that's why it's good to get these numbers as correct as possible, with inflationary principles that we can defend, but we can't go in with a level 4 estimate and just say, this project is really going to be 21 million, but we're going to put 41 million in the impact fee study, so.
And the same thing goes with our growth projections.
Yes. All of that.
So one last question. I know we're asking some real fine detail.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, again, I'm using that example of you budgeted 10 in your initial fee study.
Yeah.
In year 1. Year 2, it cost you 15 million. Okay, I understand you can still collect whatever you collect, can still go and pay for that 5. But when can you, if ever, put that 5 into a new impact fee study? Or basically you can never put in overruns?
Oh, no.
If we update every year, we can.
if we update every year, but once the project's completed and it's capitalized, then that's not the case. But see, we updated all the numbers on Southfield just a year ago, so, you know, that number's not going to change that much. Because we had good numbers, we were in the build process, everything else, and so, you know, that number is a pretty good number after it was capitalized as far as what it was in the study. You know, where you run into trouble is ignoring your capital plan and ignoring doing the studies, but we've been doing rates and impact fees so often, and I'll just tell you, it's a challenge for us as staff to go and get those numbers updated, you know, right after you do an impact fee study, because if they change, then that's going to go into your rate study. So, you know, you got to almost get out of the rate study with that impact fee study without updating any numbers or anything, and then go into an impact fee study with the new numbers. So, like this project right here that we're estimating right now out years at 15 million. That's a project that's going to be needed. It's 100% impact fee eligible. You know, that's the number that we'll use for this impact fee study, anticipating that that's the cost of it, based on all of the information we have right now on developing that site. But next year, when we do an impact fee study, if those numbers have changed and it goes to 17 million, then that number will change with the impact fee study. But if we use this number for the impact fee study this year, then when Mark comes in and does a financial assessment on our rates, that's the number we're going to use for that.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Anything else you want to say on that, Jason?
Nope.
Are you ready for your GM report?
Sure.
Unless anybody has questions.
I'll go quickly.
Thank you.
The big stuff out of UAMPS continues to be the continuous changes in that organization regarding the Energy Day Ahead market, which will go live for everybody in the Pacific Core balancing area in May of 2026. And then Mayor Franco and I attended the UAMPS toolkit. There was some great information on there. You know, he wasn't the greatest speaker, but I really found it interesting. They had a speaker there on data centers and how his utility was a 70 megawatt utility that's now
200 million.
200 something thousand megawatts with Google data centers. And, you know, and he said, you know, everybody's scared, but just know, you know, that when they come with wads of money. And, you know, it becomes a negotiation at that point. And, you know, he showed his revenues from when they were a 70 megawatt utility to now with the data centers. And, yeah, huge loads, you know, huge problems that come with that. But, you know, his utility's showing that profitability throughout too.
So
where was he at?
AI now.
He's up in Oregon.
Oregon?
Where they used to
Yeah,
have the
that's the
aluminum
other thing he said. What's
industry.
scary is same building, same footprint.
Is
With the technology change, what was a 20 megawatt data center, they come and change out all the equipment and it becomes a 70 megawatt data center with no change in the building footprint or anything else. It's just technology. So,
And then they can go down at times when they're doing
Right.
maintenance, and then, you know, surprise, right?
huge swings,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, you hear a lot about that in the news. It was good to hear somebody that's actually living it, I thought.
And he was really strong on the public power ideals too, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, they're a public utility district, which is, you know, kind of a morph like us between a co-op and an actual municipal utility. So going to going to the building update, just real quickly, I'll go over what we've done for the train because that's been discussed here. And
Can you enlarge that just a touch, please? That's so appreciated.
so we haven't got any further information from the train since they came to the last board meeting. So we are taking some assumptions here. And we're assuming, without getting any elevations from the train, that this train, you know, can't come down to our elevation here, and it's going to have to stay pretty much at the street elevation all the way to, you know, their line at a minimum for their track, and also to this switch. You know, that's got to kind of remain a constant elevation. Where in our initial civil plan, you know, we were coming from the trail and then grading back towards the parking strip. So,
What's
you
the
know,
elevation change between the existing road and what you're proposing?
we're needing about a 42-inch retaining wall in
42
order to keep this level
On the east edge of your parking.
Yeah. So, and I've got Lane here too to field any questions on this.
And if you go out to the building now, they're starting to excavate.
It's going to
parking
Need a
lot.
rail across there.
Yeah, you're going to have a guardrail across that, unless.
Yeah.
Well, there's no public path lane. Are we doing a path along that? So
No, the
there's-
trail's on the other side,
So,
on the east side.
so you wouldn't, because it's not next to a pedestrian walkway.
Yeah, so this is literally, you know, because the train is going the 5 car lengths deep, so it's literally taking from our parking and retention, you know, all the way down through there. What I'm going to come to the city for a request with on the change to this civil, if this continues, is we did have a 20-foot access here and a couple of additional parking stalls. I'm going to come to the city asking for this 50-foot access, which would make this more of our
Main entrance.
main entrance and exit.
So you don't have to do the
So-
track crossing.
So that we're not constantly doing the track crossing, and we have another option. And so that's the other change to this, besides the whole frontage change that we have to come to Heber City for.
So from a retaining standpoint, is the railroad going to be paying for that, or is that
Yes.
on?
Well, yes.
Yes.
What we've been told, yes,
Okay.
is that the railroad will pay
Make sure
for
that's
it.
a part of the.
Adam's update letter pretty well explained that, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
What he didn't show was this is the estimate and cost for that retention and changing and modifying that frontage. This would be the change order cost, $345,000.
Okay. And I really want you to get with Mark Nelson as soon as possible on this, please. Because, you know, this is the first time we've seen that.
Right, and we just barely got it too.
This came in this morning.
Yeah, we discussed, just so you know, we discussed the costs at the railroad board meeting on Monday. And I told him that the bills were going to start coming, right? And he said, that's fine. He's already got a budget above this. So I'm quite certain he is ready.
But he's got to lay tracks with
address
that
this.
budget.
Say it again.
He's got to lay track with that budget too.
Yes, he also
That's
does.
his problem.
That's right.
The other thing that's not included in this, so in talking to Russ Funk, you know, to meet DOT standards, Union Pacific type standards, the water mains will need to be lowered to, you know, 10 feet below the track, and then they'll need to come up to normal elevation. And we only have one water main, the new water main, but because the property we acquired from the county, the water tap going to that is outdated and doesn't meet code. The city is requiring us to go into 300 South
Pick it
and,
up.
and disconnect that tap and from the main coming down 300. And then while we're there, we included what it'd take to get that main that's coming down 300 that serves Public Works and a couple of other our facilities down to that 10 foot below track level.
Is that because of the weight on the track? You got to have a better buffer
Yes.
to
And
absorb that weight.
so for the water mains, to lower the water mains, you're looking at 20 grand. What I did not include, and you know, the train needs to go and get this information,
Right.
is what the natural gas line, because, you know, we researched it, and the train, the last time we went under the tracks made us go 10 feet deep with power, and Lonnie here the other day, the last meeting, says, oh, we cross that all the time.
He said that in the meeting.
Yeah. But like I say, they make us go 10 feet deep with power. I am guessing that the end bridge is going to need to be, that high pressure gas is going to have to be lowered 10 to 10 feet.
That'll be a lot more than 20,000 to lower that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that's going to be about $500,000. So at the cheapest. So
Well, you start changing it and
So
dropping it
does-
down.
Is Mark looking into that as a train line?
I've asked every time he's
I've
come
asked him
whether he's
too.
talked to.
They claimed they didn't think it'd be a problem, but I don't know whether they.
Wasn't they supposed to get back with us on that?
I have
What
not
they
heard
found
this
out?
month.
It was by the end of this
This
month
month,
that
the
they
end
were
of
going
April.
to have the design. They only sent the staking over for Jason right now so that Bud Mahas would know what area not to touch, if that makes sense. But the design's supposedly coming out by the end of the month. Now that's just a design, it's not the end bridge information. But I did mention again the FiberCom as well as the end bridge on Monday at the railroad meeting that he needs to reach out to them as soon as possible to see what's going on there and
So you're saying
get him to move it.
You wouldn't need the retaining wall if you didn't have the tracks there. You just
He
landscape
wants
it down.
He wants this done as soon as possible, and yet we can't get them to do what they're
Jason,
supposed
you
to
probably
do.
already
It
know
just
this,
takes
but
time for the design.
and you would know as
Even-
well.
even-
The
Even
eliminating the
at
parking
that, it's
spaces,
been
is it still
6,
need?
7
I have a code
months
for
since we
No.
started.
This is
We'll need a
need-
variance from
You
I
need a
just-
variance.
How many you losing? 5,
Sadly,
3,
it's
4
still got
parking
Uh,
stalls?
15.
Probably
That many?
Was it
Where?
losing
15?
No,
Losing
he does
15, is that what it is?
Where are they? Where are you losing the
Yeah.
parking stalls?
So
We
they got
we are
the-
losing
You
3
probably
on
have
each
parking.
bank.
That's
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
expand or widen
Getting back
that.
into it.
That's,
They did a lot.
that's expanding this to make it
They're
the
just
main
not-
entrance into the
They
campus.
just don't have the.
So you lose. Okay, some of those.
So, you know, it
Yeah.
was up here as a secondary entrance for mostly just light duty cars,
So 3 a stall, 3 to 4
3
a
per
stall.
stall, you've got 5
all the
stalls.
way down, so.
You've got 15.
So this is gonna
Was
have
that
to go
on-
to Heber City for a variance.
The north side?
I know that, you know,
Yeah.
this could be argued greatly, but, you know, my counter to that is by consistently using the 300 South. I mean, there's been studies by many industrial groups that just adds countless wear and tear to heavy-duty vehicles, so.
Is
Light duty
Heber City
vehicles, not
Public
so
Works
much.
going to want to use that wider entrance too?
They won't be able to,
Because it won't go on around.
no.
It'll just come into our yard.
That's Heber.
So they're going to have to deal with that track crossing problem.
Yeah, and like I say, you know, we've looked into, you know, we have employees that used to work at Geneva, and they were literally, it was their policy to not take heavy vehicles over the rail cars because of the damage it causes at their front ends. So, you know, in those big places that use a lot of rail, that's kind of one of the things that they do is try to route their trucks to where they're not going over rail, so. So that would be my ask for the variance.
Bless you.
You know, the other site plan, like I say, has about a 20-foot entrance here, so. And then lanes here, so please ask him any questions you got on the civil drawings, but,
I'm going to hijack your meeting for a second. I'm not on the agenda. I appreciate Jason letting me. I'd like to plug in on that.
yeah, there's no plug-in.
It'd be better for me just to give me the invite, honestly, Clay.
Here, I'm going to let you do your voodoo.
I will, actually, if you'll join and just join my Zoom and then you can present. You're
And
already
I can
on
do
there.
it in a different way. I brought old school stuff.
Okay.
And maybe we do that.
Old school.
Since you guys,
I like old school.
since everybody's sitting here for how many hours? 4 hours?
Just three.
I just wanted to, I wanted to come and
3 and
discuss
almost
just
a
for a
half.
second. And I'm coming not as the architect for Heber Light and Power. I'm coming not as the Heber Valley Railroad Advisory Board. I'm coming as a concerned citizen.
Pause that light.
You'll have to turn it off. The bulb will cool down. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's okay.
You're doing a good job.
We're there now.
We're going real low tech right now.
This is low tech, but this will work. Here's Heber Light and Power, here's the train, here's the ball diamonds. So we've got stakeholders, Wasatch County, got the county here, we've got Heber Valley Railroad here, we've got the train, and we have Heber City's road. So what I'm proposing is, and I've got several things that I'd like to show. But I'm proposing that we look at a new master plan for the train. We lose one ball diamond with Wasatch County, small one. We abandon this road, which is 600 West. We turn that into a plaza. We squint with this option as running the train up here, and we look at options of being able to do an extended track. And I've got an overhead that I'll show you in just a second, but this is a perspective. It helps everybody landmark where we're at.
So the
Rather than spending $900,000, and like I say, I'm on the advisory board, but I'm trying to just present a big picture for everybody, especially considering that we've got the Olympics coming in 2034.
Which field you losing?
It's the small ball diamond.
That's clear over.
It's right here. We would put a new depot. We would have platforms that would extend a total of 1,000 feet. We have additional parking. So let me.
You're taking out the parking. Well,
Let me switch now. So let's go to this one first. This is an overhead.
Of what's there now.
That's this was taken just a little while ago. This is the ball diamond we're talking about. There's the train, there's Heber Light and Power, there's the quad ball fields. We have property over here, we meaning the county. What I'm proposing, and we have talked with the Heber Valley Railroad and did a quick little master plan. Our office, independently of everything else, has spent 40 hours this last week, and we've done a master plan to look at what we could really do to grow into a space for Heber Valley Railroad that would help the train, it would help Heber Light and Power, it would help Wasatch County with their parking and their ball diamonds. We have 4 accesses, one down here, another access here, we have another access here, and we have a 4th access here. In big events, especially when you're considering North Pole and you're considering the Olympics in 9 years, you want to be able to get a mass amount of people in and to be able to disperse them really quickly. And so we've got the new depot here, a platform that extends 1,000 feet. Now you don't have what they call a pedestrian vehicular conflict. You don't have, right now, the patrons park over here for the train, and they walk not only across the road, they walk across the train. Huge problem, huge liability. ADA accessibility is non-existent. Really bad juju for the train, for the county, for the community, everything else. What we do now is we put the parking on the east side. We bring people into the new depot, we ticket them, they go out to the platform, they load the train, they go down, they come back, and there is no vehicular conflict with tracks or roads. So, in 5-minute summary, this is what we're proposing. We would love to see I've been talking about this for about 8, 9 years.
Well, you've been more over this other side in the past.
I would
haven't you?
love to see Heber Valley Railroad, Wasatch County, Heber City, Heber Light and Power, all join hands and let's do something big for the Olympics. Let's do something that will be a huge improvement. It'll give us a good core base for, the train. The train is an absolute jewel in the community, in the state.
Well,
We need to give it space to grow,
idea.
but I don't think that it's the appropriate place to grow in front of Heber Light and Power's building. I mean, to be just flat out, I don't want to see a 4-foot concrete wall in front of the building. I don't think that's appropriate. Go ahead.
How would they resolve their turning?
So we've got some tracks right here. This would have to be worked out. This is like a roundabout. I actually have the turntable right there. Mark and Mike and Scott and I, we've all talked about that. That is a potential possibility, but we can also run the tracks down 6 South to be able to get that extension as needed.
6 South or
Third South.
South.
Sorry, third South. Right now, like I say, this is 1,000 feet. When you consider you could queue up quite a train with that 1,000 feet, and there's other options to be able to run 2 tracks along there. I haven't shown this to Mark Nelson. I wanted to come and show it to Heber Light and Power first.
Have you talked to Parks and Rec?
No,
No.
nor the county.
I have talked to the county, and I appreciate that. And like I say, if I don't offend everybody in this room, I haven't done my job.
So who have you talked
just
to?
raise your hand,
That's my job,
and
actually.
I'll quit, and I'll walk away.
Who have
and
you
we'll be
talked to
done.
at the county?
This is,
I've talked to Tom a long time ago. This was years and years. Mike Davis, I talked 10 years ago about this.
Well, I know.
But
We
that
got
was
a lot.
back when we were looking at Gardner Village stuff here and everything else. And we all got to just make a little concession to try to be able to build a better, stronger community. And this is my proposal.
Well, how does this play in with what you're looking at? The
Well,
ticket station down on the park. It
oh, it
blows
would-
out
it would
right.
fit.
No,
would
it
fit
doesn't.
just
It's
fine.
one and the same.
That was just,
Yeah.
yeah. it'd
But
be
you're not
fine.
providing any parking down there.
See,
Yeah.
We have a total of 880 parking stalls now
Thank you.
with that.
Now or with
With
this?
that design.
thank you
So-
very much.
And how many are there now?
You have enough parking stalls to be able to almost host any event.
Yeah.
Can I broach this with Tom Bonner tomorrow?
Well, I'll get my office tape by tomorrow.
Well,
Yeah, it should
So,
be
Lane,
not having to come up there.
So how many ball fields are you taking away?
Lane,
We're
just
just
that one.
just this one little one.
Small one?
Lane, you can see
Just this one.
times of the essence,
Yeah.
because either the train's going to go the
Oh, I
way
know.
it's been planned, or else there's a new option here.
And you
You
know,
know, and Mayor, and I appreciate so much, I appreciate all the stuff that you guys go through. You're unsung heroes, in my view. You guys do so much to try to balance all of these issues. I'm just wanting to present options and ideas, and then let's have discussions.
yeah,
I like
so
this
did
a lot
you,
better than what is being planned.
well, we presented this in our retreat. Tom was there, something similar, trying to redevelop this, and oh my gosh, we were going to get lynched. So again, that's going to be the biggest lift that you're going to have
Right.
is from rec. Even
It's
if
that
you,
diamond right there.
yeah, even if that was, we were doing pretty much about the same thing the city was. We were just, and we were going to get lynched. So
Sid, one of the things that you could do is you can actually, this road that the city has is a critical component. Right now, I
No, and we
spent
proposed
a
it.
time study out there and watched,
Yeah,
and
we
there was
proposed
about
that.
15 cars an hour.
there's nothing.
There's
I
hardly
totally
any
agree
traffic.
with that.
It's,
Totally.
You're
it's
saying
what I
around
call,
that.
it's what I call a happy accident. The city has set that aside.
Well,
It's
even
a
that,
beautiful
that's-
plaza. That all we've got to do is retool that, reinvent that, and now we've got
Yeah, it
this
shouldn't be.
wonderful plaza. But you could grow into this without touching this for a
You just
while,
come through here. Shoot, shoot,
until you could maybe wing walk into getting that facility somewhere
So-
else.
shoot. Yeah.
From my standpoint,
We're gonna
it's
do
awesome.
There's still access.
Lane, it's awesome, and this is what we want to do there, the city. From the county and rec, it was no go.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, so that's gonna be your heaviest
Oh, I
lift. Yeah,
understand.
you can convince the city all Yeah, because we
No, it's
are
just-
looking at this. So that, again, that's your biggest lift. I'm 100% for this because it adds, it
Well,
emphasizes
we've talked.
the second leading tourism
There's two
place. Yeah. Number one's Wasatch State Park.
State Park,
And then this one's the train.
Wide.
And yeah, I'm 100%.
Is there any ability, I mean,
A little.
Or lanes.
I like the idea that, you know, there's a lot I like about it. Is there any way to eliminate tracks going across the road?
Well, it won't be
On the north side
You're
or the south
saying right
side?
here?
Huh?
Yeah.
So that's just almost a private drive that is internal, because your main road's here, that's gone, now
But
you're just.
believe me, I understand that, I was just.
If you could, that'd be great.
The wish list is if you could do it without, and
The key is to get people, and I had a long discussion with Mark Manuel, who's the operations manager at Heber Valley Railroad. He says the typical, what you try to do is parking, depot, train, platform, and then reverse. Right now, it's completely flipped. You got parking, you go over tracks, you go over roads, you get half of the people, about hit, then you get to the depot, then you get back onto the train. It's completely backwards.
Yeah.
And so Mark and Mike Manuel has been tutoring me as to what's the appropriate flow of traffic when it comes to things like that.
well, and this is a question for Jason, does that create a problem there? I mean, that seems
to me, it's less of a problem, especially if there's no traffic coming up 600 West. I mean, it doesn't matter what we do there. I mean, if there's rail car there, then that's just a blind corner. You cannot see when you're pulling out.
As long as that roundabout is big enough for your
If that roundabout's
trucks.
big enough and designed right, then you'd have more.
You could even move that down a little bit and almost make that just a little kink over. Yeah,
Or do you even need that there?
Or you may not even.
No, you wouldn't, especially, well, if you're gonna have the turntables somewhere around there to turn the train around. You don't want, again, it goes back to what Jason's saying, we don't want any tracks that he's gonna be driving his big trucks over.
Right.
So,
Yeah, if you could get that turnaround off the.
So
that intersection,
down
you
there,
can work that out.
then the people that's going on the train come around there.
So I'm gonna chime out now. I appreciate everybody's time. I'm gonna leave all of this. Jason, I'll leave these boards with you. Mayor, I appreciate so much your time.
Let me know.
I'm sorry you've had to wait so long.
No, it's okay.
It's just that
Thanks, Lana.
you really
guys are
gotta get the
busy.
support of the county council,
Right.
including Carl McMillan, right, Parks and Rec, and they really not liked us throwing maps around. And we've got to be able to find a replacement plus more.
Thanks, Vanna.
Good job.
I tried to be very
Call my Vanna.
careful with those
Expensive
expensive. Like I said, you could step into that right now. You just phase it. You get the depot, you get some of the parking, and you just phase into that master plan.
So that's gonna be,
I know this is
Yet you can see why would we spend $1 million
11th hour,
to put the track in front of Heber Light Power
15th minute on it.
if this were a viable option, right? So it's trying to.
Any of those concepts basically enable.
Well, they
For
were-
several years, right?
Would you move forward with your plans as is?
You know what I'm saying?
I think that's
So,
where the discussion needs to go. I
Funding
mean, we
would be
could
Because
just
you
go
need to
with,
decide one way or the other.
I've got to decide, I've got to the end of the
I
month,
would agree.
literally,
It may not
without
happen sooner,
Right.
right, for this
people
to.
demobilizing and doing civil right now
Yeah.
and cutting down to grade.
Yeah.
Just keep me posted if you need me to come
And
and
moving them
discuss
on,
with
then
other
this
groups.
change order is gonna go even higher because you're gonna have to mobilize again to come back to the train plan or mobilize again, or there'll be a change order for them to mobilize again to stay
And
with
let's see who
existing.
else.
can't be marked.
So, the clock is.
I can't speak for, I mean, they would know better. I just don't see them having an answer on that.
And Coley, I'm sure Coley.
Let's say we
So-
build everything as traditionally contracted. We're not.
I like 10.
We're not
I
that
like
much
it.
further into it, like the train's not that much
That's
further
the same, because
cost to tear down a new sidewalk.
We studied it and we
It's
presented
not-
it
it's
to
not
our retreat, and again.
It's not the same amount.
So,
Yeah, no, and I know.
I'll
know it's a-
So you and I will-
Come
Okay.
The only information I'm
I've
getting
been-
is
I
from
was-
Mayor Franco, that they don't have the money to do this. They don't even know what the audit costs are.
Okay, well, good luck.
So,
And please keep us updated too, and thank you very much for your patience.
But you're redoing everything.
Everyone, do you mind very much if we continue now?
Please.
Is there anything on the customer communications update, Jason?
yes.
Please.
So, this is on the website, and this stuff also went out to our customers.
That's what-
As far as an email went, you know, the changes in our electricity rates, and then also on our bill. And I brought my bill, so you guys will pass it around.
Oh, you're gonna let us see how much you
Okay.
pay?
You don't have a 400
You
amp,
guys will
right?
see
Lisa?
that your decisions affect my finances.
It affects all of ours too, and they seem to forget that.
But you'll see the message that went out on,
It's like we're
on the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
billing. It's in this top corner.
Yeah.
And I'm on budget bill pay and time of use rates, so, you know, might not be a good comparison for yours.
Let's see what he's got, 200, huh? He's got a lot of stuff plugged in.
So we have a lot of
Yeah.
information on the website. We also are sending out this email newsletter that, you know, really is, you know, how to save energy. It's got very short videos on 5 ways to save in the morning. Can heat pumps help fight allergies? April is, you know, National Safe Digging Month. Very prudent for us who get a lot of dig-ins, so hopefully some stupid excavators watch that. So that's kind of the update. We also covered the changes to the 400 amp service rate.
Good.
With, you know, a good explanation of typical 400 amp customer, 1,830 kilowatt hours, has a demand of 10 kW last year's bill, with the taxes excluded, which we're just a collection agent on.
And that's the part I'd asked Emily if you were going to identify that as a monthly charge, right? Not a yearly charge, but a 1 month charge.
Oh, okay, I thought you were asking
That's the
about
part.
the.
That's the
okay.
part I was referring to, when it's last year's bill, this year's bill, because I don't think that's a yearly charge. I
No.
think it's a single month.
Okay. We'll clarify that.
So this is this on the Heber Light Power website, all this stuff we were looking at.
Yeah, it's on the website, and then these were emailed out to customers.
Yeah, I that's what I was complimenting
Yeah, that's great.
Emily for.
So that's what I have on customer communication update. Next update, I think some of you guys were included in an email on this, but quite honestly, I need board direction on this. The consultant is not working for me, he's working for the board on the rate increase, but Mr. Goodall has requested that he has done his own analysis that is differing from Mark Beauchamp's UFS's.
He wants to meet with you first and see what you think about his model. I'd appreciate it if you
When did
meet
that
with
come
him.
out? I didn't see that.
It's just been in the last 2 days.
Yeah, because I haven't seen it.
Not all board members were included.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
So,
Yeah, I just thought
but
I did I miss
He
something.
wants to meet with Bart and Jason first, and then depending on what you go over his model or his assumptions or whatever with him, you know, then he's willing to let, of course, board members look at it too. But I'm glad
What's he basing his
preferred to
expertise
meet with
on
you
versus
first instead of just
Beauchamp?
coming here.
I
That's
don't-
done it nationwide.
I don't know. everything he requested from us was on the website, but Bart supplied him that information directly via email. You know, I don't know. I had a phone conversation with him. I asked him what he used for like wholesale power costs. He said he just put in inflationary principles. You know, I asked him on a few things.
He's guessing on a lot of stuff.
Well,
You know, that's why I don't want to get into a big fight with a customer
No, I don't
against
think he's doing
the consultant.
A professional.
The board hired and had several meetings with. I guess, you know, that's my conflict in it. And I just want the board to advise me. I'm happy to meet with him and go over his analysis. I'll just tell you, I've met with this customer 100 times probably. And he's a very smart man. I'm not disagreeing with that. But he's actually doing an analysis that a company that makes a living doing this.
That's what I say. He's matching.
Going up against.
Okay.
And I just want to know, would it be better for him to meet with Beauchamp? You know?
I think so. Let's put him on the.
Well, that's probably a good idea for us.
Yeah.
That's probably a good idea.
But who's going to pay the bill? I mean, Beauchamp's not going to do it for free.
No.
Which, whatever. If
So do we, Jason, do you think he has a correct analysis? And, or is it just him just grasping and kind of organizing and saying, oh, it should be this? Because again, Kendall, we hired a professional. They do this for a living.
nationwide,
And they
multiple
understand
utilities.
that. So how can somebody go above that unless they're working for another competitor that's doing the same
No,
thing?
he's not. He's not. He's
So-
individual.
My feeling is, if he meets with them, what's he going to change? What, is he going to change their mind? Probably not. Can we use his study based? Can we use it for us? Probably not, because he's not accredited. So,
Especially where he disagrees with our expert that we're paying for.
yeah. So,
Well, I bring it up. It's just one of those things that, there's been a lot of discussion and dialogue over the years with this customer, and like I say, I'm not discounting him. He's a very smart man.
Yeah,
but he's not done rate analytics for a living as far as electric rates or water rates the consultant you hired literally does the gamut from sewer, water, power.
He's an expert.
Yeah, he does it around the country. And that's what he's arguing. And I don't have that analysis. I have what you guys see. Meaning I don't have Mark's full-blown, all his inputs and, exactly what he used for, wholesale power pricing or exactly what he used for escalations in, debt financing and stuff like that.
And Mark may have some objections to sharing some of the inner workings of his analysis.
yeah, he should, because that's
It's part of his training.
I mean, that's his expertise.
Yeah.
I think he's strong enough to hold the line where he needs to.
No, I agree. Just pointing
Okay.
out a potential concern.
Because, let me see where I think I'm coming from here. Because Bill Goodall spoke at the rate hearing on his own to agree with the study and now feels that he has other information, he's probably not one that we want to poke at, even though he's poking, right?
Well, I thought he'd kind of come around in line.
Well, now he wants to relook at that model, all right? Because, there's other changes that have even happened since then. Like I say, I think we need to take a page from Abraham Lincoln and keep our enemies close, if you want to call it that. I don't think we need to discount him. He stuck his neck out for us at the rate hearing. If he's having concerns about that, I think we should address them. I'm not saying that, what's going to happen there, but
Well-
he is the one that has cared the most, let's put it that way, about the finances of this company. I don't think we should try to blow him off.
Well, we're happy to meet with him. I just wanted, one, the board to know what was going on, and two, if the board's good with us meeting with him. I'll just tell you this too. This is a customer that can be a time magnet.
Yes, I understand.
One meeting leads to another and another.
So with
or
that,
it could, if
has he brought anything that will counter our other study? Has he brought an insight that
Mark might have missed?
He said that he's built his model, and based on his analysis, the 13% rate increase is not needed at this time, and we shouldn't implement it. I let him know that the first billing has gone out with it in, and I had a brief conversation with him and said that I would look at schedules and get something scheduled with him. And then I seen some emails going back and forth that included some of the board members, which brought me to here, which is,
At the end of the day, I mean, the way I look at this, at the end of the day, the study is a spreadsheet with assumptions, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't seen his, and he can have some different assumptions, but they're going to be different assumptions. And I'm just thinking out loud. I think probably meeting with the consultant is better, because the debate is with what assumptions are being made.
Right. So just so the board knows, I mean, when Mark came forward with his final approach and study, I did a litmus test on it. I could probably go do electric rates for utility with some Excel spreadsheets I have. So I did that litmus test, and every time I did it, it came up to an 8 to 15% increase. And so when he came with a 13% increase, I figured, he's within the range of reason based on what you're saying, the assumptions. Because if you put in, worst case scenario power costs increasing and various things like that, you can get up to that 15%.
Right.
You put in best case scenario and everything, and you get down to around an 8%.
I think the sticking point is that Mark Beauchamp's model was saying that we were going to bond this year, and we're not bonding this year.
Oh.
And so with delayed bonding, is there a difference? He's thinking that there is going to be a significant difference with the delay in bonding, because that was Beauchamp's big thing. Your debt service coverage ratio is going to be, too low. You're going to be bonding this year. You've got to do this. And if we delay bonding, and we don't know how long we're going to delay, right? We're still figuring out some things on that. Then that, I think, is where he's coming in and saying, here's a different model. You see what I mean? That would take that into account.
I mean, from that standpoint, then I would say have Mark update his. I mean, that's got to be
update his.
That's got to be an easy, in terms of that assumption. That's an easy tweak, plug. Here's what it says based upon, the bonding delayed till X.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Right.
But we've already made our decision of what we're going to do. We can't go back and change that. I don't want to go back and change that, because I think that the 13%, people are finally starting to get used to it. And I think that 13% is going to help us raise what we've been trying to do.
And there's nothing wrong with that. We always worry about cash reserves too.
Yeah, cash reserves and whatever.
It's just it could affect next year's rate increase also.
And it could bring it down.
Exactly.
But
I think that's what it's worth looking at.
But now hearing this in terms of delayed bonding, okay, I have no idea what
Well, I'll just
Mark's
tell
in
you this. I mean, as far as our plan goes, we've got a goal to develop a plan of finance, by Q4, with the anticipation, based on the conversations we've had with, the FA and the underwriter, that the best time to go for a financing could be Q1 of '26, which, the spread from him calculating a bonding in 2025 of Q4 to Q1 of 2026 is a couple of months.
One quarter.
Yeah.
In addition,
And so it's just one of those things that, I think you got to listen to the experts on when's the best time to go to that financing. So,
Well,
anyways, like I said,
build that into, when I dealt with Mark on the rate study, I fully anticipated January of '26 financing with you guys approving a resolution to claw back charges. I mean, we're talking pennies on the dollar here. I mean, it really is not.
With what?
It's not that big of a. It ain't gonna move the needle, is what I'm saying. I'm sorry, I just.
So Marvin Shine is already committed to do a revisit or do a financial
revisit in
analysis
26.
Next year to see if that additional 3.5 is it or something might be lower or higher. So there is contingency already.
Like I say, me and Mark are happy to.
I'll make a bill any day.
Well, I think he's got to at least meet with Bart, okay? But,
I think he should meet with Jason too.
oh, that's fine.
Yeah, together.
Just trying to, keep time where it's needed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it
Okay.
sounds like.
Do we have any idea what it would
Schedule
cost to
time.
have him sit down with Bill?
Reach out to him,
Or
schedule a
with
time.
Okay.
Mark.
All right.
What does he charge an hour?
Let's have him sit down with these two first and then see what goes from there. Would be my
Thank you.
suggestion.
Thank you. Jason, do we need to go
Well,
into a closed
your
session?
time, too.
You kept talking about, or is that a
Yes,
closed
but I
session
can be
that can wait?
quick. I can be quick.
Do you need
Okay.
a closed session then?
We need to have a motion, please, for a closed session.
Yeah, if you can make this
Oh, wait,
motion,
is it about purchase or sale of real property?
Yes.
and let's say real property and procurement process.
Yes.
And procurement
Okay.
process, is it?
Whatever, I'll make that motion, whatever Adam said.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll let you vote
All
first.
right, see you guys
Yes.
later.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys can
Sid,
stay
will you
or go.
vote yes on the go?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that passes 5-0. We're in
Who
closed
do we
session.
need?
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to come out of
and
closed
adjourn?
session and to adjourn.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Thank you, Brenda.
I wanted to do that.
You
All in
split 'em up.
favor?
Okay.
Let's all just say yes, right?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, appreciate everybody's patience. Good discussion, lots of big issues. I had no idea it would go this long.
Yeah,
So
me
thank you.
either, but it was a good meeting, you guys.
We do what we do.
Yeah.